Good evening, folks, and welcome to Chris Wyatt Reports for a special feature tonight, which kind of caught me by surprise, special feature. Let me give the backdrop. I'll tell you who's here. First off, let me greet them, and then I'll explain why we're here. Roman Kabanak, of course, famously from Tea with Helen. I've got a long memory. And Renegade Report, as well as Morning Shot. Roman, how you doing?
Hello, Chris. Very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me onto your show.
Well, thanks for accepting. And then Gideon Joubert, or as I prefer in English to say, Gideon. Gideon from Paratus, how are you today?
Chris, I'm also doing fantastic, and also thank you for the invite. It's really good to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And neither of them are here in the role of Morning Shot or of Paratus, but rather as directors of DearSA, a civic group in South Africa. Now, the backdrop, the background for what happened here from my perspective. For those of you who know, I have a relationship with all these gentlemen. Gideon has been on my program a couple of times. I've also shown up back in the day when he used to have the Friday, whatever they did, they used to drink or something show. I used to chat there a lot. That was kind of fun. Roman had me as a guest on Renegade Report just before it went off the air back in the day. I was like one of the last people on there. And then he's been a guest on my program many times. Now, neither one have I ever met in person because Roman was busy off vacationing, screwing off in Europe when I was in South Africa, so he couldn't link up. And then Gideon had a family issue. We were supposed to link up in Cape Town just before I left, and he couldn't get there, so we didn't meet in person. So we've never met in person. The other person involved in this conversation that's going to come up is Rob Hutchison. Rob and I have a professional relationship that dates back a while. I interviewed him some time ago, a year or two ago, I think, about what is DearSA and what is it doing, that sort of thing, and introduced people, a wider audience around the globe, to what DearSA South Africa is. And then I came up with this concept of segments for my program. We do Fireside with the Colonels with Fian Tutoy, a fortnightly program, Kenako, the Call of Africa with Dumo Dengo, Koketso Ritsan, and others. And then I also created Answer the Question with Rob Hutchison. And we arrogantly called ourselves the Wise Bros. Anyway, because someone nicknames to that. So that segment, so Rob and I were doing that several times this year. Now, also, I've met Rob in person because when I went to South Africa, he linked up with me, picked me up at the airport in George, and we traveled the garden route together to Port Elizabeth, where we went to Ronaldo's Cafe. So that's just to give everybody a background. In the interest of full disclosure, you know, I'd like to be as transparent as possible when it comes to these things. So that's what I know about these guys. And in fact, Gideon was just on my program recently, just talked about Second Amendment issues here in the States. So that's that. Okay, now the backdrop for this. Last Thursday, after 2 weeks of delay, Rob and I hadn't done Answer the Question well, so I said, Rob, let's do it. And he said, sure. We scheduled, and just before it, he said, I can't do it. I got an ongoing court case. My initial thought was it was a DearSA court case he couldn't talk about, so we postponed it. No harm, no foul. The next week, he said, I got a delay again, so no harm, no foul. Then the third week, he said, we can do it for sure. I just ended the court case, and it's an issue with DearSA. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. And he might have mentioned to me prior, but it just went right over my head, okay? I wasn't really paying attention. I don't recall. So just before we went live, it became very apparent to me that Rob wanted to talk about what happened now that the court case had been resolved and he'd been reappointed to the board of DearSA. So the co-hosted Answer the Question last Thursday went from a co-hosted Dear Answer the Question to an interview of Rob Hutchison about DearSA. Now, during that interview, it became abundantly clear to me that based on things that Rob was sharing with me, that it was wholly unfair to the other board members not to give them an opportunity to respond and or counter things that were being said. That in the interest of full fairness. So I said on the air that I'll offer to Gideon and to Roman a chance to come on. The other board member, Chloe, I'm not familiar with her, although in the interest of full disclosure, I just talked to her, but she's not coming on this program. That's the separate issue. So I reached out to both these gentlemen, and to their credit, they immediately said, yeah, we're happy to come on the program. And in Roman's case, he's been burning the candle at both ends. He's kind of knackered there. So I'm sure that it's probably the last thing he wanted to do right now. But both agreed to come on, and so that's what this is. Okay, guys, what the hell's going on? Okay, let me start with Roman. Rob was removed from the board of DearSA about 6 weeks ago or something like that, and there's allegations by Rob, and there's reasons that the board removed him. Can you give us a little bit of backdrop here? But before you answer that, I'm confused, and I think some of my audience is confused. Let me explain. What's the spiel here, to use the American German there? What's the deal? What's the spiel here, the game? Is the court case over, or is this just a temporary thing? My understanding, and perhaps I inferred incorrectly, is that Rob was reappointed to the board, and that the next thing that's going to happen is apparently there is an internal investigation and a disciplinary hearing that Rob is going to have in January, but that's not related to the court case. Can you explain that, and if I'm wrong?
All right, well, the entire point of what is happening here is corporate governance. and the attempted removal of assets from DearSA to a director's personal, what would you call it?
Personal portfolio? Personal portfolio?
There we go. Maybe that's a good way to do it. So that is the only question that needs investigation here. Once we dismissed Rob, he hired a legal team immediately. He launched an urgent court application at the High Court in Johannesburg. Obviously, we have to defend that application because he was asking for a variety of things, such as the removal of all directors from DearSA other than himself, personal cost orders against myself, Gideon, Chloe, and a variety of other things that, if it was a default judgment, would have left us high and dry personally, as well as DearSA as an institution. The court dismissed all of his claims except for the reinstatement as director, because the court was not sure whether the procedure to remove him as director was correct. So the court said, we're unsure about this question. It's a bit of a gray area. We're not too sure about our powers as a high court, but we feel perhaps that justice might have been, we're still not sure. So what they said is Rob must be reinstated pending a review of the process that led to his dismissal. So i.e. the members meeting where we held a board meeting, which was about one resolution, which was the removal of Rob from the board of DearSA South Africa. The court said they're not too sure whether that was procedurally fair. So therefore, he is reinstated until that decision can be reviewed at a later stage. And as for what review means, it's a bit up in the air. Apparently, it means you have to go to the court for them to review that decision to see whether it's procedurally fair. So that's the snapshot of where we are at the moment.
Okay, so that's the legal perspective from your view and from the board of directors, what's going down. Okay, Gideon, let me ask this quick question here. So this organization, DearSA, has been around for some time. There was issues with the previous instantiation of it. Other folks were involved. We don't need to get into that unless it comes up, but because it's not germane. It might be germane to your case and your situation, but I don't think it's germane to this conversation, but we can talk about it if you want. But this organization, as it exists today, it was reinstantiated in 2021 as a not-for-profit organization in South Africa. And one of the requirements in South Africa is you have to have directors. You can't just have a single person running the organization. So at some point, Rob Hutchison, the founder of DearSA, reached out to you and to Roman, and I presume asked you to be directors. If that's true, when did that happen, and how did that come about? Do you recall?
So I don't recall the specific time frame, but Ramon.
It's okay. We're not in court. You don't have to tell me the date and the timestamp.
So Ramon was already a director at that point in time, and I think I got approached around about September, October last year, where they essentially said, "Look, they need a third guy." Ramon has worked with me before on other projects, so I imagine I was a known quantity to him. And I've also encountered Rob a few times, so I wasn't unknown to him either. And I'm most certainly not a notable personality or person in the public space, but I'm not entirely anonymous. So there is a small track record from my side pertaining to who I am, what I stand for, and what I do. And when I got approached by this, I immediately basically said yes, because I love what DearSA does. It's a public participation platform. It puts democracy in the hands of the ordinary person, and it's a great check and balance against the government just doing whatever it is that they want. And it's such a crucial task. And as far as I'm aware, it's the only organization in South Africa that still performs this task. So it was a wonderful opportunity to be involved at something that was at the cutting edge, brand new, and making a really sizable impact, and for the most part was vastly misunderstood by the general public. It didn't quite know how the process worked, so there was this wonderful opportunity to educate people about why their voice matters and how to best exercise it. So yeah, that's the long and the short of it, really.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, at some point, and this actually came to my attention, I think I became aware of it in August because we were talking about DearSA, or maybe it was sooner than that, I don't recall. Because as I said, Rob and I did this Answer the Question segment, which is supposed to be weekly, but didn't always work out that way. But at some point, either in the Northern Hemisphere summer, which is your winter, or August, whenever it was, Rob, we were talking on air, and I became aware that you were the CEO. You were appointed as the Chief Executive Officer of the organization. Is that correct, Gideon?
So that's correct. So that was an evolution of the initial sort of directorship. So there wasn't a clear executive role by October 2021. That changed at the beginning of this year, of the new year, where Rob had this project, I think DearGov, but I could be mistaken in its name, which is essentially the DearSA platform, but taking it international. There was interest from the UK, if I recall correctly, interest from the Netherlands, I think potential interest from Australia and Israel as well. So there were a few of these potential projects that he was spending putting his focus on. And part of that was him expressing a desire to sort of step back from the operation side of DearSA, still stay as chairman and as a board member, but he wanted to shift his focus on growing and expanding and building these projects. And he needed someone to sort of take over the day-to-day operation of DearSA and run with that as a project. And that became my portfolio, rather my job, I think, as of March/April this year, if I recall correctly the date there.
All right. Well, thanks, Gideon. Now, of course, folks, for the audience here, part of the questions that are being prompted goes as we go through the conversation. I have some prepared questions, of course, on some things, but this is a discovery for me as well. A number of people, as I told both these gentlemen off air, have reached out to me. Some involved with DearSA, some who think they're involved with DearSA, some who just want to stick their finger in the mud. And I'm getting pieces of information from here and there. Not everybody is fully forthcoming about what they share with me. They'll share something because they like Rob or because they like Roman, and that's not helpful. So some of my questions will be about that, and it's also to frame this, just so you understand here. So if you're waiting for me to pat Roman or Gideon on the back for doing a great job, or you're waiting for me to fire a missile sable at them because they've done something wrong, take a breath. We're just trying to discover here and see what's going on here and get this out. Because as Gideon said a moment ago, my perspective on DearSA, and the only reason I'm going to pursue this and talk about this because it's probably going to come out in the press at some point. Let's get something on record here where people are objective as possible. And in my perspective, DearSA has done a public good for South Africans from outside the country. That's what I've seen. I think it's done a great job highlighting issues and forcing the government to either answer them or not answer them. But okay, now let me change to a little an arrow in my quiver here. That's not how it's intended, but it might come across that way. So let me ask Roman this question. I'm very puzzled, and I sort of talked about this, Rob, but I've become even more puzzled by this since then. Now, let me explain. Okay, so I've been investing in companies for decades as a shareholder, and I understand how companies work in the UK, the US, Germany, France. I'm not a subject matter expert on how they work in South Africa. I know a bit in Botswana as well, but not in South Africa. So I'm very confused, and maybe it's because of the nature it's a not-for-profit. But on for-profit corporations, and here in the States for nonprofit entities, board of directors, with the exception of, say, the chief operating officer or the chief financial officer or the chief financial officer, CFO, with the exception of someone like that, the board is normally comprised of other individuals who come from outside, other experience. They come in kind of like I got the impression that Roman, you might have been brought in because your background with media and in law and that sort of thing. I'm supposing, I don't know why, but that would have been a reason why I would have thought you'd have been invited in as a director. But as I understand it, the directors here, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, Roman, this is where some of the confusion is coming from. Based on information I'm getting from multiple sources, that's why I need to ask you. Directors here had an active involvement in the managing of this company. It's rather small, but in making decisions, signing invoices, making business decisions, and also drawing a salary, and all were considered employees as well as directors. That to me is a very odd situation, which I think is confusing the whole picture. Roman, what have I mischaracterized, or have I got something wrong there? Can you explain to me what's going on?
So, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak about South Africans generally, but it's very normal to be a director of a company and to be an employee of that very company, which is what happened at Dear South Africa. So all of us are directors of Dear South Africa, but we're also employees of Dear South Africa with a mandate, an employment contract, and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite common here. I've seen it happen in quite a few different things, but because DearSA is a non-profit, you can't, there's no shareholdings or equity partners or things like that. So essentially the board are also the employees because the board does all the work for the most part, other than a few contractors here and there. So yeah, that's basically how it works.
Really quickly, I just there are people in the chat who are saying that this thing must be getting canceled. It hasn't started. Ladies and gentlemen, if one of my moderators could get in the chat, or people say, listen, if you're watching this, YouTube is not starting the video. This thing started 15 minutes ago. Please let the people that are sitting there know we're trying to watch this who aren't watching it in the chat that restart your browser because YouTube is harassing this channel yet again. So that's what's going on here. I just saw one of our viewers saying that it's late. I guess it's been canceled. It's not canceled. We're live right now. It's YouTube playing games. So it happens all the time. By the way, Ramon, back to that question in a second, but I think you were listening to my broadcast yesterday for my Night Owls, and I pointed out that as a subscriber to your channel, since its inception, I have all notifications. I have my application on my mobile phone, and I showed people today that I had 5 broadcasts that others had posted, recorded, and live streams that were notified. I never get notified of any of your videos. Your video yesterday came as a complete surprise to me when people sent me messages like, "What do you think? What do you think of Ramon's take?" I'm like, "Well, he hasn't been on the program yet." Just that's an aside. I'm sure you're aware of that, but that to me is shadow banning.
Yes, it's a common practice if you're not in America or another Western nation. YouTube doesn't care about us too much. Chris, I'm afraid to say, well, for you, they've definitely got a death wish for some reason.
It's like Charles Bronson is after me or something.
Because you spread misinformation about the very, very precise electoral process of different countries. It's shocking that you do these things, Chris.
There you have it. That's true. Okay, well, the Mutual Admiration Society, well, that was a moment of fun there. But Gideon, let me ask you the same question about this board, because Ramon is saying it's a rather common practice, and that may very well be the case. But do you, because this is my perception without all the information coming out now that we're going to talk about here, and some that will remain hidden because it still needs to be investigated further in my perspective. But what I've seen of it so far, I'm on the impression that this might have been in part contributed because we have directors that are doing what I'm saying here in the U.S. is a non-traditional director role of being involved in the operations of the company. It's a mixing of roles. Do you think that contributed, or did you guys work well as a team before the recent fallout?
So we actually work quite well as a team, and there's a great number of not-for-profits or NPCs out there in South Africa that basically follow this exact same model. And I wouldn't even say that the model is flawed or that there are inherent weaknesses in it. In fact, I think inherently, because they need to be 3 board members, 3 directors, and because they have equal power, that acts as a great check and balance for bad things happening or misbehavior and irregularities. So we did, and then this is the grand tragedy of the whole thing for me, is we worked very well together. And there was a great, well, in my opinion, from my personal experience, I cannot speak on behalf of Ramon or Chloe or even Rob, there was this atmosphere of mutual trust. However, over time, that kind of eroded. And one of the main reasons for it is, and I might be skipping ahead in the conversation here now, is as directors of this NPC, part of our duty and our executive responsibilities and the things that we need to do operationally to keep DearSA going is we need access to all the systems. And it's not just for the sake they're all equal. It's also for redundancy and business continuity, for want of a better word. If something had to happen to Rob, for example, if he got ill, incapacitated, or died in a car crash, none of us have keys to any of the back ends, and DearSA would essentially, unless through some emergency process, we managed to get a hold of that login details, we'd be able to then continue DearSA going. That was never forthcoming from the beginning, and it created problems, and it created a lot of operational problems. It created a lot of issues with regards to trust, and that was absolutely subsequently never resolved. And it's a problem we still sit with now. So, from my personal experience, what I thought was going on, I was quite happy for the most part until the wheels started coming off internally. I don't know if Rob ever really did trust us as directors by withholding that access from us, and that is a bit of a, call it a sore point for want of a better word.
And also, sorry, Chris, just to interrupt. Gideon was appointed CEO in February of this year. In my video, I showed the board resolution and there was an onboarding section for Gideon to have access to a variety of things. I think Gideon only had access to the bank account in June of this year, Gideon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was around about June, July, and there was a whole bunch of other things that took about 6 months to gain access to. And obviously, there's a whole swathe of things that I never got access to.
Yeah, and Gideon was the CEO. So I never sought to have access to things in the background because I wasn't responsible for putting up the campaigns and things like that. But for the core part of the NPC, Rob was very reluctant to share anything with anyone. outside of, well, himself. I do understand that he gave Chloe temporary access, and then when she tried to log in again, the temporary access was revoked. I think Gideon, same with you. He trained you for like a week, and you had temporary access, but that was revoked as well, if I remember. Not during the period of time here. Like I'm talking about while we were still getting along very well. So it always seemed to me that Rob really needed us just because he needed us in terms of the law, but not needed us in terms of wanting to contribute to DearSA Africa or to strategically manage it if he wasn't there. So the real sore point is that he wanted to become chairman and leave DearSA Africa to us, but he never left it to us, right?
All right. Well, that heads in a
the
direction.
problem.
That heads in a direction I was going to get to here. And so there's a couple things. Number one, we're going to need to unpack a few things about what the role of the directors was. I've been informed by different sources that some of you had different roles. Like, for instance, Ramon, I was told that you were responsible for finances, and then something else, and different things like that.
Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, in your chat, there's DearSA as an account.
Yeah.
Now,
I presume that's Rob.
Like that as well. Like it's a breach of various suspension conditions of the hearing, and you see, like, just use your real account, Rob, and we can have a chat. But to use DearSA's official account, which belongs to us as the organization, is indicative of something a bit deeper.
Well, whoever's using that, I would say that in this conversation, that's probably not appropriate, and I would agree with you on that. So if whoever it is, just please use your own account there, log in. But anyway, back, and I don't know that that's Rob. I presume it is based on the statement there. But so we need to unpack a few things. That role of directors here, that's one of them. And then now you made me lose my train of thought there, Ramon. I got to get back there. I'm not very good interview in this very moment here. But well, let's just talk about that very quickly. So Gideon, you obviously in the role of CEO, you've got to have access to pretty much everything that the organization is involved in. Otherwise, you can't perform your duties as the chief executive officer and also as a director of the board. So did you have any other duties beyond that, which we were just talking about getting access to accounts, but were there anything specific in your role? Because again, you guys were not just directors, but also employees of DearSA. So did you have a specific like employment contract or director thing that said, this is what you do? You're responsible for public relations, or you're responsible for donor, raising money, or you're responsible for strategic. Did you have something like that as part of your role? Because I mean, that's important to understand.
So for my role specifically, we were a very, very, or we are a very, very small organization. We don't have a lot of employees. We had very few temporary or contracted subcontractors to do specific tasks. So I always tell people that the CEO title seemed a little bit overly heavy for the size of this organization. And to be honest, my job description wasn't specifically defined because it couldn't be. I needed to be involved in a lot of things simultaneously because that was just the nature of the organization. There's work that needed hands, and I would spend time with Chloe, assisting her in her portfolio. I would help Ramon out with certain projects. The call center was one where we both worked together on that situation. We dealt with suppliers. And one of the key things that later evolved, and I think it's important to bring this up, was in order to essentially pitch the DearSA platform to other nonprofit organizations who would want to run polling through us or their own public participation campaign, so to say, because they saw value in what we were doing and that we were quite well positioned to do it. And it would be a great way for them to not only get public opinion, but also legally obtain the data of the people responding to that poll. It would have been done completely transparently. Everyone would know exactly who it would be. So, for example, we'd have Ubuntu Dynamics. This is not an NPO that exists. It's just a placeholder name. Would contract us to do a poll for them or a public participation project, and then we'd say this is Ubuntu Dynamics' public participation process. It's powered by DearSA, and all the data belongs to them. So that would be in full compliance with PAPIA. And we had a few organizations that were very happy to sign up for us for this and actually pay us for it, because that would be a great revenue generator for us to carry on building our systems and do what we need to do as well as pay the bills. The problem with that is we got two projects with other NPOs. And I took these projects to Rob and I said, great, we've got them. Are you happy to run them? He's happy to run them. And then nothing happened. And because I had no access to the back end, what happened is these projects didn't run in the time frame they required. And not only, obviously, we didn't get paid for them as a result, but also you end up embarrassed and reputationally damaged a bit because these people gave you something to run. You dropped the ball because the person responsible for it bottlenecked and just didn't do it. And that was kind of the result. So that was one of the real practical day-to-day frustrations at the end of the day that came with my job. And I'm sorry to bring that up, but I think it's a necessary point to mention.
It's a fair point, Gideon, and I wanted to ask you specifically. I mean, you mentioned that there was no response. I mean, what kind of time frame are we talking about? Was this a time-sensitive 3 days, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months? What kind of a response? And that kind of goes back to, before you answer, it kind of goes back to the point earlier about the small company, people needing access to systems, because if one person's not available and you're equal status as members of the board, then someone's got to take action. If it all relies on one person, you have a single point of success, a single point of failure, which seems to be part of what was going on here. So Gideon, I'm sorry, go ahead and answer the question. Sorry.
So that's thank you, Chris. That's actually a perfect question that ties in with it. So the time frame of these projects were, I think, 2 to 3 weeks at one stage. It wasn't just a couple of days. And with obviously there would be like a critical 1 week period that it really needs to be up and running. But building a campaign doesn't take more than a day or two in general. What made this worse is that Rob had extensive absences of 1 to 2 weeks at a time, and I can't remember what the longest one was, where you just could not get a hold of him, which further exacerbated the operational challenges. Now, he was also going through a rather tumultuous and tough personal time at the point where the absences were at their worst. So we didn't really push it because we thought, okay, he's not coping with things. We'll let him deal with what he needs to deal with, and then we'll try and resolve this when he comes back up for air. The problem is the issues were never resolved, and they got worse. But those, again, secondary to the main reasons why the situation went in the direction it went.
Okay, that's actually very. I'm sorry, I gotta hang up this phone call. Something going on with another not-for-profit organization that I'm involved here. The commander just calling me there. I had to hang up on him. Okay, well that actually does help here. Okay, let me just get something out here right now because it just keeps coming up in the chat. I'm sure you've seen it, Roman. There, you addressed it in your video. I actually asked Rob because one of my viewers asked when Rob was on the program. So let's just get this out there. It's also a matter of public record, I imagine, because you have to file financial reports as a non-profit organization, and the financials are out there. So people be asking, are they paid? Are they paid? Are they paid? Let me answer the question, and I'll let Roman correct me what I get wrong. Based on what I've discovered, and I'm talking to folks and listening to things, the directors do receive remuneration, and they are also all employees of the company. So as employees of the company, they will receive a salary. To my knowledge, directors are scheduled to receive 30,000 Rand per month for their role. And my presumption is that includes whatever they do as a director and as an employee of the company. Roman, please correct anything I got wrong.
That was true, but we didn't get paid for October and have received very reduced salaries in November and December.
Yeah, no, I heard that, but that's kind of grousing. So, but the answer to the question is the salary is 30,000 Rand per month for all the directors, but you're also employees of the company, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right. Now, here's one that's people are asking. So, what's the expectation of that? I mean, are you expected to work 2 hours, 80 hours a week? Is a 40-hour job? Because, I mean, everyone involved has other interests and other activities. I mean, this wasn't a full-time gig, was it?
No, so the expectations on us was just based on trust for the most part. So we never had time management on each other's time or anything like that. We just hoped that the tasks were completed. So we had monthly board meetings, and then we could action the tasks going forward. And most of them were done in time for the most part.
All right, now this is a question that probably, depending how people, if they're not objective, may not reflect well on people. So just bear with me, audience, okay, and my guest. All right, so let me ask this question, and it may sound like a leading question, but I think I need to ask it in a leading question just to get to the correct answer. And I'm going to come to Gideon and put you on the spot with this. I'm going to give Roman a break, then I'll come back to him. All right, so when you were brought on the board, based on the things I've seen and people's views, it's a view. It's not a fact, and I want to know your thoughts. Did you get the impression you came on the board to make a difference, or did you feel isolated on the board? Did you feel that at some point that perhaps Rob needed you because of the legal requirements to have someone on the board, but really envisioned running the company in his own fashion, in his own way. Did that play a role in what's going on here, or is that a false impression, Gideon?
So that became my impression near the end. In the very beginning, when I started out, it was an exciting opportunity to make a difference. And look, this fight aside, I still believe it is an exciting opportunity to make a difference, and I still believe in DearSA, and I'm 100% committed to it. And that was the reason I got involved. Is I have a strong sort of, I'm not going to call it opinion. There's a better word. Sentiment.
A sentiment.
A view of the public right and the public good, and ways to essentially frustrate and prevent bad legislation from coming through, and the government essentially just running roughshod over our rights. I mean, I think anyone that lived through lockdown and through 2020 and got trampled under those hooves would have some sort of, unless they're mentally ill or really a hardcore Karen, would have a strong opinion about.
Well, there are plenty of hardcore Karens out there, trust me.
Yeah, unfortunately. And, I'll give this credit to Rob. He had a great idea. It's a great platform, and I am proud still to be a part of it. But from a working with other people and trusting other people and giving them the required authority as per their mandate and as per their position to do what they need to do, that was lacking. And it's something that could have been resolved, and that we slowly and amicably tried resolving, and it just never did. And things then, I would not say spiraled out of control, but the moment we realized that our legal fees, and that is an issue that Ramon covered in this video. I'm not going to unpack like hours of footage and conversation on it, but the moment we needed to take action on our legal fees and our legal bills that put us in almost R1 million in the red, the stops that were pulled out to stop the organization from hitting the wall, where our creditors would come after us, were significant. And as we sit here today, they were effective. I think we barely owe anyone anything. So DearSA is very much a going concern, and we are in a good position. And that is thanks to Ramon and Chloe doing the necessary investigations and getting that stuff ready. The problem was, and this became a bit of a theme, I don't remember the exact day we had that board meeting. It was the last one we were all together as a team. We discussed the cost cuts that were necessary. They would have been temporary in nature, between 3 and 6 months, and what the implications would be and how that would help. And we all agreed as a board. All 4 of us voted in favor of them. And less than 24 hours later, Rob started frustrating that process by just not agreeing with what we were doing, and essentially trying to throw speed bumps in the way. And that was then ultimately a pattern had formed by that stage, because that wasn't the first time it happened. And that's unfortunately, again, why things became as combative as they did. And I'd say that was perhaps the final straw before the camel's back really broke.
So you didn't feel that that you were just brought on just to be there so Rob could run the country without interference, or company without, not country, it's not Lesotho, to run the company without interference. But towards the end, you certainly felt that things were going the wrong direction.
Yeah, and it became, that sentiment then started taking hold. It's like, well, if I'm brought on board as a director, and if I'm given a specific task and mandate, and I'm given a contract and I'm being paid, which is the worst part for me, is you're paying me to do a job and then withholding from me the tools to effectively do that job, as well as frustrating my other attempts at actually bringing in additional income, bringing in additional projects, all this sort of stuff. Then you start becoming demoralized and going, but what is my purpose here then actually? And why am I here? And why did you bring me on? If you are clearly either not trusting me or not seeing me as useful, or have some other agenda and are unwilling to actually just be frank and open about it. And that was my personal experience with it.
So Ramon, from your perspective, when you were asked to come on, did you feel that it was, as Gideon just said, it was a great opportunity to make a contribution? He felt like it was going well. The team worked well initially. Did you have a feeling you were brought on for that reason, or just, so that the company could be run and Rob could run it the way he wanted? What were your thoughts on it, and did it change at some point?
So, I mean, originally I was on in early 2021, and
You're from the outset with this new instantiation. Almost
yeah. So for 6 months, I told Rob, I mean, call me if you need me. I'm here just as a token director because you needed me to run this company. As far as we didn't get any salaries back then. We only got salaries from April of this year, if my memory serves right, or March this year when Gideon was formally appointed CEO. But before that, it was very like sort of ad hoc. I would go to the board meetings. I would be introduced to Chloe. I would be introduced to various suppliers and things like that. But I never had a really active role. It was only when Gideon became CEO and Rob said he wanted to step away and become chairman and to lead Dear Government, which is this expansion of Dear South Africa. Only then did we think to ourselves, okay, well, now we actually need to be on board. We are already on board. And now we need to have different mandates for each director to pursue and things like that. And that only happened during the course of, I believe it was March or February this year.
So it's a recent,
and that's when I took a far more active role than before. Before I accepted, Rob would run it.
So prior to that, your view of what was going on was what I would consider a traditional sort of role for directors. That's outside folks to oversee, to go to board meetings, to ensure that the company is headed in the right direction, that sort of thing. That's kind of the role was, but it seems to have modified or morphed early this year. Is that an accurate description?
Well, I mean, it's true. I mean, Rob came to us in November of last year and he said, listen, guys, I can feel like there's a bottleneck. I'm the bottleneck. What I'm going to do is I'm going to become chairman and focus on this Dear Gov initiative, which is an extension of DearSA. You, Gideon, and Chloe run the local DearSA. And we were like, great. That sounds like a wonderful idea. So that's what we tried to do.
Gotcha. Well, let me go this direction here. Now, a lot of this, it appears a lot of this consternation issues seem to have come to a head over this call center issue, which is a very confusing situation for those that aren't aware of it, and even for those who know a little bit about it. So this call center, there was a contract awarded to a company that to be a call center. And let me explain why DearSA would need a call center. Some of the viewers might be going, why would you need a call center? You're not selling services or goods. You're not a for-profit business. Well, they probably need a call center because they have to do fundraising. You have to reach out to people. You have to raise funds. You need people to do that. So that would be a purpose of call center. Is that an accurate assessment there, Roman? Why you need a call center?
Very much so.
Okay, I just want, because people are going to say, why do you need it? You're not selling widgets. You're not selling magazine subscriptions. So why? And people aren't calling in with tech support. Damn it, your computer doesn't. Okay. I just want to make sure we're clear. Okay, so there was a call center, and I may have the information wrong. That's why I'm asking you. There was a call center. Then a contract was awarded on it. It was a new contract with a group called PEX or something like that. And this group was providing a call center, which I think was based in Nelson Mandela Bay. And this apparently became a big issue in the organization. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, because we're trying to find out. Apparently, either the board or Rob canceled the contract, and then there was a settlement made with that company to reimburse them for the canceled contract. What have I gotten wrong there, Roman? Help us out.
No, it's very simple. The call center is a red herring that Rob loves to go on about. I mean, I was asked directly in the hearing whether that the call center never even existed in the first place, which is ridiculous, right? We had a call center, right? The call center was costing us a lot of money every month. They brought in a lot of money as well. I'm not knocking them. They got a business to run. We have a business to run, right? That particular call center wanted to renegotiate the contract. To me and to the board generally, and especially to Rob, the terms were not really good, this renegotiation terms. So as a board, we decided, let's look at alternatives. What alternatives there are? So I thought to myself, well, my business partner, Morningshot Byron, he runs call centers, right? So let's ask him what's good. He came to us with a proposal. The proposal was very good. It was 80% cheaper than the previous call center. And basically what he gives us is agents, the desk, the phone line, well, which we pay for, of course, the computer. And basically we just feed those agents the leads. We give them the script. Gideon went down for a week to train them. I went down for 2 weeks to train them. And it was a much cheaper option. And it was scalable in terms of how many agents we wish to employ at any given time, right? If we wanted 10 agents, it would cost X. If we wanted 5 agents, it would cost X minus 5. It was very simple accounting compared to the previous call center, which was a commission-based structure. So this went on. We had, myself and Gideon had, I believe, like 100 calls every morning with the call center, every meeting, 9 a.m. Myself and Gideon were on Zoom, talking to the agents, going through the script, going through the leads, making sure there were issues sorted out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Once that was set up, within a month, I was in Europe, Gideon was on leave, and then Rob decided to one day take away access to the CRM from that particular call center. and no one knows what's going on.
And what's
Byron calls.
CRM for people in the audience that don't know business? CRM?
What does CRM stand for, Gideon? Customer Relation Management, something like that.
There you go.
It's essentially, let me just explain quickly what it is. It's a computer system, and the agent sits with it in front of them, and they have only access to the system that they are is authorized to have. And essentially, all the leads to phone are imported onto their screen. And if they have an auto dialer, they have a wonderful job. And they literally just go through the leads for the day, and then they record the responses on there. So it's a real-time monitoring and feedback system. It makes remote management fantastic. It makes it completely transparent, so you know exactly what's going on at any time. It's a great thing.
No, thanks, Gideon. I just want, because not everybody's familiar with these terms, and not all IT experts or telecommunications experts. I mean, you start hearing phrases come up that relate to governance, like POPI. Like, what's that? No, that's the thing you put on for Remembrance Day. No, that's not what we're talking about. So I just want to make sure that we're clear. Thanks for that. Go ahead, Ramon. I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to make sure we got that out there.
Right. So as I said, this we'd done for the call center was in operation for about 2.5 months or so, 3 months by then. I was in Europe with my family. I was seeing my family who I haven't seen thanks to the virus of unknown origins started. Gideon took leave for the first time in
Was it Wuhan?
months. Yeah. First time in months. And then I get frantic phone calls from the agents and messages from the agents. We had a WhatsApp group, Gideon, myself, and the two agents, saying that they can't access anything from their CRM. So I tried to speak to Rob. He doesn't answer. I try to speak to Gideon. Gideon doesn't know what's going on. I try to speak to Rob again numerous times. For 24 hours, there's radio silence from Rob specifically. And then I actually had to call our CRM manager, or the person who developed for us. And I said, have you received any instructions about the CRM and the call center? He says, yes, I received a WhatsApp from Rob. And he wouldn't divulge what that WhatsApp said. And then finally, at the end of, I think, 48 or 36 to 48 hours, Rob came on and said, we need an emergency board meeting. So, I mean, this is ruined my holiday, of course. So we have an emergency board meeting, and he said, okay, I removed access because I'm worried about POPI, and I'm worried about, what else did he say, Gideon? Performance, things like that.
Yeah.
Right. Things which are not put in that contract with that particular call center, right? The contract is just about having bums on seats and making sure that the bums are on the seats when you need them. It's up to us as DearSA to train them and make sure that they're doing their calls and a variety of other things. So all the reasons for Rob unilaterally taking away access to the CRM are sort of dealt with in the contract, and there are termination clauses in the contract that we could have used. But basically, Rob took away access without telling anyone, without even talking to anyone of us. And when I say us, I mean the board. And there was not even any mention of this whatsoever in terms of someone being unhappy with that particular call center. So once again, we were left as the board fighting, putting out fires created by Rob in this particular instance. So yeah,
I'd like
that's
to add
the call center.
clarifying context to this very quickly. So
Yeah, please do.
because it's all about the red herring of the call center being this big corrupt business. It's essentially, it was our in-sourced call center. The whole point of it was insourcing it into our direct control. We are paying for a desk, a computer, a line, and we have two agents that are essentially labor broke to us. The contract would have been for 5 agents, but we only got 2 because we wanted to start scaling it small. We did projections. I still have the Excel spreadsheet where I say we're looking at a minimum break-even period with 5 agents of at least 3 months. And the additional issue to this is the CRM system had not given us real-time accurate performance stats at that point yet. That was still being developed. So how you can come to a conclusion that it wasn't performing is a little bit beyond me. Be that as it may, and Rob also likes saying, but Ramon sent a letter of cancellation to the supplier. It was a board decision. He's correct. Ramon did send that letter, and we did as a board decide.
He's saying it right here in the chat, Gideon, don't worry, under our YouTube channel.
I can't see the chat. So the reason we made that decision is by that stage, the relationship with that supplier was completely and utterly destroyed. There was no trust left from their side to us pertaining us meeting our obligations. There were previous niggles before, but the moment that they were revoked complete access, that meant that they could no longer perform their duties as per their contractual mandate to us. That was a big disaster, and that was not the first bad supplier relationship issue we've had. I was involved in 2 really bad severance negotiations where I feel I was kind of sent in under false pretenses in order to kind of be an economic hitman, which is also something I feel very resentful for, and that I have had to apologize to people for after the fact, and sincerely so. The last thing is the allegation that we've settled with this call center who is suing us. That is not the case. We haven't settled. We haven't paid them anything. Rob still has access to the bank account. He can still see what goes on there, what payments are authorized, what isn't. So the fact that he goes on social media telling people we've settled what the amount is, as if there's been any payments to this call center that have happened, is a complete fabrication. And I don't know where he sucks that out from, but
okay, because that's been floated out there, and I just heard it from Rob. But again, people that don't have facts don't know what they're talking about. That's why I'm asking. So there is no settlement currently with this call center. That's a matzo ball still hanging out there in the air that has to be addressed. Correct?
No, absolutely. We're trying to settle it because we don't want a claim against us in court of law.
All right. Well, Ramon,
which is what a board is supposed to do, I believe.
Yeah. No. Anyway. Exactly. You're supposed to do due diligence on this. But here's the question I've got related. Look, you guys are saying that the call center is a red herring. I don't know that it is. It seems to be a big part of what soured the relationship, at least from the outside. It appears that way. So I don't know that it's a red herring. It might be a red herring from your perspective in that it's being thrown into a conversation that you don't think is germane, and that's fair. But from an outside perspective. And Ramon, you addressed why the board went this way, and the board voted on it. It was 80% cheaper. It looked like a better option. But especially for a not-for-profit organization, for people looking in, it kind of looks like something. I'm not accusing you guys of being the ANC, but turning to a director's business partner to be hired for a service that almost doesn't pass a stink test for a lot of people. And I suppose the board agreed to it, correct me if I'm wrong there, and obviously for the advantages they expect to get out of it because it's going to be so much cheaper and better than what you had in the past. But did it not strike anybody on the board as, and you don't have to speak for other directors, you can speak for yourself if you want or not, strike as odd that it didn't look almost like patronage or nepotism to turn to someone that's close to the company rather than hire a totally outside independent organization? It's not a dagger. I think it's a fair question. Ramon, do you want to address it?
Yeah, sure. So Byron's a business partner in Morning Shot. Everyone knows that. Byron is someone that I trust to the death. He is someone who has been extremely helpful to Morning Shot. And most importantly, he gave quite a lot of guidance and a credit line to DearSA in this particular endeavor. We were paying him 30,000 Rand a month for the use of the call center with 2 agents and everything like that, much cheaper than anyone else. He paid for the line advance. He told us how it all works. He was by far the best option we had at the time. So that's the proposal I put to the board, and the board approved the proposal. Nothing more, nothing less. Do you think that I would sell out DearSA for 30,000 Rand a month is ridiculous and ludicrous? Because, I mean, believe it or not, I have other businesses that pay me much more than that, much more than the DearSA salary. I'm not trying to be arrogant, but this notion that I would sell out and destroy DearSA for some commission on 30,000 a month is simply, excuse my language, but it's just idiotic.
Roman, let me stop you right there because I mean some people may assume that, and it would be unfair of them to assume that. I was not implying that. I want to make that clear. What I'm saying is, and I don't think you inferred that I was implying. I just want to make sure it's clear.
No.
But my statement is that from a appearance of impropriety, it's always prudent to avoid any appearance of impropriety. And that's why I'm saying, did the board not question it? But the board voted on it, and it sounds like you had a lot of benefits from it. I would say that if I had been on the board, I might have been a person opposed to it just because of that reason. But I understand the reasons for it. At some point, Gideon, we talked about how, I'm sorry, Ramon, did you want to finish anything else? I didn't mean to cut you off for your response. I think you answered it fairly and legitimately.
No, thank you, Chris. That's fair. And it really is a red herring. Byron's a business partner and a personal friend. He's a private person. He does a show with me, and that's it. This narrative that Rob is pushing out is, I think, going according to the plan, which is like trying to build up tension with people who are not involved in this particular story whatsoever, and trying to concoct a narrative that is just simply not there in the first place. This entire story is about corporate governance and about Rob trying to remove IP from DearSA to his personal capacity. That is the entire story. Everything else is mist and fog.
All right. Well, thanks for that. Listen, Gideon, let me ask you this question about the call center thing and where things went south here, or appears to go south. But before I do that, I'm going to caution both you that I've implemented a parliamentary Section 89 investigation into your conduct, and we're going to have a pro forma vote, and we're not going to pass it. We're not going to accept the report. Just thought I'd let you know that, Gideon. So back to the call center thing. So seriously, I'm trying to have a lighthearted moment there, but
no, thank you for that. I think it's very welcome and like heavy topic we're dissecting here tonight.
Yeah,
Chris,
you need that occasionally. You need that occasionally. So the performance thing, did it come to you as a surprise? This claim or allegation, or that the call center wasn't performing and that it was going to be terminated? I mean, did it just come out of the blue? I mean, how long was it in operation? You were talking about the metrics. You wanted to scale it up. So I mean, did the board come to the conclusion they weren't happy because the board decided to terminate, or was it just a cost issue? And did that, in your view? And again, this is an opinion, so it's not a fact, it's opinion, unless you've got something, evidentiary to back it up, which I don't imagine Pearson would, because it's probably an opinion. In your opinion, did that sour the relationship between Rob and other board directors?
The call center, I think, was not the start of it. I think that was where it became properly hostile, but there was already underlying tensions long before that. So with regards to the cancellation of the call center, that it was a board decision. And the reason it was because at that stage, I personally felt it was unsalvageable. And I think, I'm not speaking on behalf of Ramon and Chloe, but the supplier relationship was destroyed. Okay. And
now, when the supplier relationship was destroyed, was this because of action of the board, or a failure of the board to do something, or actions that Rob did, or why was that relationship soured?
It was the unilateral revocation of their ability, the access to the system they needed to do their work. And I must just add...
sorry, I mean to interrupt, but the call center operators couldn't access data they needed?
That's it. That
helps clarify, because that wasn't clear. Thank you.
No, sorry. Okay, so if there's anything else I can clarify, please ask. But that was essentially part of the problem. Now, the performance-related issues are bunk, because we knew it was going to take a little bit of time in order to get up to the same level of efficiency that we previously had. And we factored that into our calculations before we even made this decision to start off with. With regards to data integrity issues, that was also a regular thing that came up with a lot of other organizations and suppliers from Rob. So it was almost a trope at this stage, and there was never any indication ever. And I'm fully confident that there was no data integrity concerns with this place whatsoever anyway. There was an additional point I wanted to make, Chris, and it was when it completely evaporated. I was hammering on this issue.
It's okay. It'll come back to you. We call those senior moments. Don't sweat it. But here's one, because Ramon made an allegation, and if I heard correctly, I think you might have reiterated, Gideon. I don't want to speak for you, so if I'm wrong, but Ramon definitely made the allegation, and I've heard it elsewhere that Rob was trying to steal the intellectual property of DearSA. Now, it would make sense to me that the logo and the name and all that stuff would be registered trademarks of the organization. Now, in speaking to Rob, he said that was his personal property, if I understood him correctly, and that he created this years ago. Is it true that it belonged to him? Was it never registered in the not-for-profit? I'll give you a chance to get here, Ramon. Was it never registered in the not-for-profit? I mean, what's the status of this? Because, I mean, it's a serious allegation, and it's a very serious concern. And beyond that, to me, if I was a director or a CEO of a company, or CFO, I'd be very concerned that the intellectual property that we're using doesn't belong to us if it's just someone else's. So, Ramon, can you give us some clarity on that?
Certainly. So our legal advisor or legal officer is Daniel Elof, someone that we all trust deeply.
And he's from Herder Spies, I think, or something like that?
That's correct. Yeah. That's correct. So Daniel told Rob a few months ago, during the course of last year, that it is best practice to have the IP for the organization within the folds of the organization. And Rob agreed, and he has transferred the IP to DearSA Africa. I believe it was completed this year in April or May, if I'm correct.
Okay, that's important. That's something we didn't know. Is there documentation to confirm that?
Well, there was documentation in his disciplinary hearing, which was furnished at the last minute. It's the first time we saw those invoices. So yes, that is confirmed. The IP does belong to DearSA Africa and is currently within DearSA Africa.
And did I hear you correctly? You just said that information was presented at the recent court case. Is that what you just said?
At the disciplinary hearing, yes.
Oh, it's a disciplinary. Okay, but that's an internal
Well, the evidence
matter.
thereof.
That's the internal matter
evidence
for
thereof.
that's internal matter for DearSA. That wasn't in the courts.
No, not in the court, no.
Oh, I just want to be clear. But okay, so you have documentation to confirm that Rob transferred his personal creations and intellectual property over to the not-for-profit around April or something like that this year.
Or he transferred the IP of DearSA to DearSA, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, that's okay. Excellent. Obviously, you can back that up with information. That's important. So the effort, there was a discussion that Rob is registered in a not-for-profit organization in an effort to try to take the intellectual property. That's an allegation that's come out. I don't know that either of you made that, but I've heard that from others. Is there any merit to that? Have you heard that? Because Rob also has a number of organizations that are registered. Like, for instance, he was talking to me earlier this year about DearPA for Pennsylvania, and like he registered the domain. I don't know if he registered the company, but are you aware of this, or have you heard this story that he's trying to register something in order to take the intellectual property there, or is that just a red herring as well?
Well, the entire basis of his suspension was because we found out that he tried or was in the process of migrating the IP away from DearSA Africa to his own personal name. This is backed up by emails to the attorneys who are trademark attorneys who were busy in the process of doing so under his instructions. Instructions were given in September or August of this year, if I remember correctly. Thankfully, Chloe especially managed to intercept that and to make sure that that process did not happen. In fact, once we spoke to the attorneys after his suspension, they credited the invoice because they said, okay, this action is cancelled, this instruction is cancelled. So it just goes to show that he was definitely in the process of attempting to migrate the IP away from the MPC to his own personal name once again. And that's beyond doubt.
Yeah, that would be beyond the pale if in fact that's the case. But the question I have is that the legal firm engaged here, did they not find it odd that they were getting a request to transfer someone's personal name or a personal entity from the organization? Did they not contact the board and say, hey, wait a second, have you approved of this? I mean, if I were an attorney, you're an attorney, Roman. I mean, if I were an attorney, I would think that if I received something like this, I mean, look, if IBM, if like this chief financial officer of IBM contacted me as an attorney and said, you know what, the IBM logo, we're transferring it to Sam Palmisano. We want to honor him as a retiree. He'll have full licensing there from now on. That would strike me as very odd. Why in fact would, I mean, you probably can't answer. It's not something we'd have to talk to lawyers, but does it strike you as odd that a legal firm would pursue transferring this? That seems to me as a very, very fishy sort of situation. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, it is fishy. So we have spoken to the attorney, and she was testifying in Rob's disciplinary hearing, and she just said she's known Rob for a long period of time. Normally, if she has a new client, she would onboard the client with and ask for resolutions and all that. But she knew Rob from years back. I think they started working a few years ago, so she always trusted his instructions. I also found it a bit fishy, but she's not the culprit here.
Now, Roman, this one's for you. So, as I said, from my perspective, from the outside, I look at DearSA from the time I've learned about it, what it does. It seems to me, as Gideon also referred, that it's something that's a net positive for South Africa. It's done something for civil society. If nothing else, it's amplified issues with campaigns and brought petitions and signatures and messages to the government to force them to look at it. Sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't, but at least you're trying to get a response from the government. Whereas if I just send an email off, I'm going to get blown off, that sort of thing. So I think it's a net gain. But during the lockdown, DearSA got involved in campaigns, joined some other court case, if I'm not mistaken, and helped get some lockdown things changed. But getting involved in court cases means lawyers, which means expenses, which means a lot of fees, and is costly. Now, in your video that you prepared, reference your video specifically, you were talking about Rob, my words, not yours. So I'm paraphrasing. Basically, bankrupting the company because he's involved in all these legal cases, getting DearSA involved in these legal cases, and all that money's being siphoned off. And you stated to the effect that, well, DearSA is not there for that purpose. But my question to you is in fact that what was happening appears to be that legal fees are certainly hurting the cash revenue, the flow revenue stream, but do you actually think that the role of it is just to be a place where people bring their comments? Because not to be a smart ass, but and I'm embellishing a little bit for the sake of trying to have this conversation. I mean, at some point, if someone believes, and I'm not saying you believe this, but I inferred it from your video. That's why we have you on here. If someone believes that the purpose of DearSA is simply a message board where people put their comments, well, I mean, that's why we have Twitter and Gitter and Facebook and all of these things. So what's the point for DearSA being around? It's either a place that aggregates the stuff and forces the government to do something, either electronically or physically, and or something that engages in court cases. I suspect, and you can correct me, that your point was that there was a lot of fruitless effort spent in court cases that resources could have been better used elsewhere. Have I mischaracterized it, and what are your thoughts on that?
No, Chris, I mean, it's very simple, right? DearSA is by far the best public participation platform, probably in the world, if I'm honest. Excuse me. The frog in the throat.
That's all right.
Yeah.
You do have a French background, so the frog's allowed.
I knew you would say that. This is a personal attack. We lose the World Cup, and now you do this to me, Chris.
You didn't lose the World Cup. There were no French nationals playing for France. Ouais, c'est vrai, c'est vraiment.
I was supporting Argentina.
I was supporting Croatia.
Well, I was actually supporting Morocco because they beat. Anyway, who cares?
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Your background, so.
So I mean, DearSA Africa already has a great platform and a great position in civil society in terms of driving the agenda forward, right? So we don't have litigation units. We don't make 50 million rand a month like AfriForum, but we could collate the data. We can create a report and become amicus in various court cases, but someone else must drive that litigation, like AfriForum or Sakeliga or the DA or the EFF or whoever wants to drive a cause, and we have the data for it and the reports for it based on the campaign that we have. We are more than happy to become amicus for it. But at the end of the day, DearSA Africa is a non-partisan platform, right? It's just a platform for people to express their views. We shouldn't take public action on things. We can help if there's a campaign and there's a report stating a clear delineation between right and wrong in a particular piece of legislation. And also hold government to account in terms of procedural fairness in that regard, in terms of public participation. Right, was the participation actually done? Was it verified by the state? Did they take it into account or did they just ignore it? Then we can come in with an interlocutory application or something like that. But DearSA is never meant to be a litigation firm in and of its own. We don't have the funds for it. To be honest, I don't think it's our duty at all to be that person or that institution to do it. There's a lot of other institutions who have the funds, who are geared up specifically for this, and we are more than willing to give a helping hand to those people. But for DearSA to take the charge front and center is sort of besides the philosophy of the platform itself.
All right.
And very expensive.
Well, it is very expensive. I mean, it really is. That's legal fees are the last thing you want to get involved here. I understand where you're coming from. That helps clarify it a bit there. So, Gideon, speaking to Rob when he's on the program last week, I asked him, I said, so given the events that have unfolded recently in this court case and what's going on and Rob's position and other board members' positions, is this a irrevocably be broken relationship? And I asked him, he said on a personal basis, Rob said that he doesn't think the relationship is necessarily broken with Gideon, that he could still have a personal relationship. He did feel that his relationship with Rahman might be irrevocably broken from a personal standpoint. And if in fact that's the case, that's kind of sad. So Gideon, I'll give you a chance to jump in, and then I've got a question for Rahman about that. So Gideon, do you think that's a relationship that can be repaired, a personal relationship, or is this irrevocably broken?
It's a difficult one to answer because as the situation stands right now, from my side, it's a hard no. You don't make someone that you care about or friends with sign contracts with suppliers, then essentially end those relationships unilaterally, and then the person who signed the contract looks like a total you-know-what, and do that repeatedly. You also don't lock them out of the systems they need to do their job, and that tells me that the person doesn't trust me. And the thing with trust is it's a two-way street, right? If I trust you and you don't trust me, then it's obvious that I can't trust you. And I feel that if a situation, that there's always someone out there that says, oh, but we should get around a table and resolve the differences. The reality is this isn't kindergarten, and this isn't a My Little Pony show with rainbows. Some differences are not in the sphere of running an organization, especially one that's this important and it's filling this much of a key critical feature. You don't just patch things up and act as if nothing happened, especially when the names of the people involved have been publicly slated, and especially when the organization, more important than my name, the fact that DearSA, something we've all spent a huge amount, and this is something that Ramon hasn't touched on yet, but I have my personal differences with Ramon. I sometimes think he's a complete, can I swear on your show?
Yeah, feel free.
I sometimes think Ramon is a complete puss, and he is sometimes.
Well, but the censors at YouTube don't get that. It's Afrikaans.
Yeah. But at the same time, we have a method of resolving our deadlocks where we can still work towards a common goal. And it's the same with Chloe. I think she's shouted at me more than once, which I appreciate. The fact of the matter is, Ramon being all blasé down there, he put a hell of a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this organization. Chloe, probably the most of us all. I've probably done the least. But be that as it may, it is horrendous to see something that you've tried to build get taken apart brick by brick in front of your face by a process like this. And someone also said to me the other day, "Oh, but why are you guys doing this publicly?" And I said, "Well, we never did try. It was an internal process until somebody else made it public."
Well, and let me break you there, Gideon, for just a second. So what happened? Sorry to interrupt your train, just because that is a fair question. You guys didn't talk about this at all anywhere in social media. You didn't go anywhere. And like I said, I just came to the realization of what was actually coming. And Rob wanted to talk about, we talked about in our program. That's when it came out. People have been talking about social media. I guess a lot of stuff's been posted on Twitter by others and stuff. So it has come out there. The reason you guys are here is not because you wanted to come talk about this publicly, but because you responded to an offer from me to clear the air based on what happened last Thursday. And that's why you're here, correct?
I mean, Chris, the irony is that Rob's legal team asked us to keep it quiet, not make any public statements, not make anything in the media, and we agreed. Mm-hmm. Rob took down the website. Rob started tweeting about us. Rob went on your show. He sent his founding application and founding affidavit to all of our potential partners, including other institutions, other organizations who are friends with me, during the period of time when the court case was still ongoing. So it's weird for us to abide by the rules, and then the person asking for the rules, who set the rules, it does not do so themselves. So it's always been a case of, it's an internal issue, let's sort it out internally. And Rob is the only one who didn't want to do that. So we are here to defend ourselves and to stop him from owning the narrative that there's something weird about all of this. There's nothing weird about it. The weird thing is when a director cannot understand what a company is, doesn't understand what the role of a director is, doesn't understand what corporate governance is, doesn't understand what financial management is, but he wants all of this to be for himself, and everyone else is just there to, I don't know, just to make it legitimate for some reason. If Rob took the IP and ran away and we were liquidated, we directors are on the hook for that. I don't want to be liquidated. I don't want to be sequestrated by someone. But if Rob carried on and we didn't stop him, that could have been the case. So there's nothing else really to the story other than people that understand corporate governance and people who don't. It's as simple as that.
Well, Ramon, it sounds like the personal relationship between the two may be irrevocably broken. From Rob's perspective, it is. From your perspective, and there's one thing that I don't know if it's intentionally you let it on, but in your video that you produced on Sunday, you said that Rob is welcome back on the board. He's coming back, but he's welcome back because the court said he's coming back. That was why he's coming back. But so to be fair, and then at the end you said Rob is welcome back. He's back on the board for now. Is that the potential that he might not be on the board in the future based on his
pending the review as the court ordered. Gotcha. Okay. We abide by the court. We're not the ANC here. We abide by what the court says, and the court says he must be welcome back until there's a review. Cool. That's exactly what we will do. We have a board meeting on Wednesday, in fact, where he has been invited. Hopefully he pitches up, and we can get some shit done.
All right. Well, that seems fair enough as far as that goes. No, it's okay. It's all right. You know, we had Gideon profanity and Afrikaans there, so it's not the end of the world. Listen, gents, the whole thing is really unfortunate, and let me say that because in the chat there are people who are condemning Roman, and there are people in the chat who are condemning Rob. There are people who are commenting on Gideon's stunning good looks and saying he looks guilty. I mean, this is just at some points a bit childish of people in my chat, and there's no need for it. But there's a bigger issue here that's bigger than Roman, bigger than Chloe, bigger than Rob, bigger than Gideon, and that is what has, in my view, been a very good platform And I think most of us don't want to see it go away. We want to see it continue to contribute. And I'm not sure the path forward here, if it involves all of you or a whole new board, or I don't know. But it's very frustrating. And back to the point of why you guys are on here, and the reason why I did this and I made the offer. The reason I did the offer is because I felt that after we got in the conversation with Rob last week, it would be unfair and be sandbagging the board members to not give you an opportunity. That's why I did it. And as I told both of them, if they had refused, I would not have said anything bad about them. I would never have said, they refused to come on, they didn't take the opportunity. I would have said that they're not commenting publicly now because it's still an ongoing process. My purpose in doing this, and trust me, for those who know my old channel and how many views I used to get, and how many hours I used to get, and how many thousands of people used to watch this program, is not for clicks. I want to get an opportunity for everyone to have their comments on here in a public forum where it's on the record here, so that no one can accuse someone of something untoward here going forward. Because at some point, the media will wake up from their slumber, and this will become a news story, particularly if the ANC and the EFF find out about it, and they'll go, ooh, it's something we can destroy that we find to be an annoyance. And that's my concern here. So that's the motivation on my part here. Trust me, it's not clicks.
One of the reasons we wanted to keep it internal, because it is in fact an internal matter. But oh well. But cat's out of the bag now.
It's out there now. So, and for those who've tuning in late, I'm speaking to Ramon Kalbanek and Gideon Joubert, who are board members with DearSA, and they're on tonight and responding to the conversation. We'll go a little bit longer here as long as you can stick with me. Responding to the conversation Rob Hutchison had with me, the founder and a director of DearSA, based on recent events at the civic organization. So they came out tonight to respond to that. And the board members for DearSA include Chloe Roberts, Ramon Kalbanek from Morning Shot, Gideon Joubert from Paratus, and Rob Hutchison, the founder of DearSA. Now, you all seem, and I talked to Chloe today privately, all of you that I've just mentioned, Ramon, seem, dare I say, passionate about DearSA, and you seem to, in your own way, have its best interests at heart. Do you think that's fair, including Rob? You're passionate about the organization?
Well, I can certainly attest to myself. I wouldn't be fighting for the organization if I didn't believe in it at all. The only person who's tried to liquidate it is Mr. Hutchison himself. He sent a notice, a Section 345 notice, which is we must pay him money he apparently loaned to DearSA, otherwise he would liquidate it. Fine, we have to defend that as well. It's a strange behavior for someone who purportedly loves DearSA so much. No, so I'm here because it's not for the money. I'm here because I truly believe in DearSA Africa and its potential to change the future of this country. And it's just far too important to leave in one man's hands who doesn't understand corporate governance extremely well. So yeah, I'm here because I truly love DearSA. I love working at DearSA. I truly believe in the message. I truly believe in the platform. I truly believe in the good that it can create within South Africa. So, yeah.
All right, well, we're going to ask Gideon, but I think we're getting past his bedtime. He's looking kind of forlorn and tired there. But before I get to that, I thought I should share with you that Joe Emilio, South Africa's least known comedian, has popped up in the chat. And he said, on a lighter note, I think it's the most views that Chris Wyatt Africa has had on a live stream in a long time. That's right, Joe. I have a hard time competing with your 12 live viewers and 100 views on your videos. Ooh! Seriously, no. Joe Emilio is fantastic. You guys should check out his site. Hey, so Gideon, your thoughts. It came across to me early in this conversation that you do have a passion for what DearSA is doing or should be doing. Did I read it wrong?
No, I think, I don't like talking about supposedly how passionate I am about something, because that feels insincere, but
yeah, it is a bit Oprah-esque, right? I never talk about that.
Did ask.
I'm forced. I know I'm forced to answer the question.
Not one's getting a Chevrolet given away tonight.
But I agree with Gideon. It's weird to talk about passion, because passion is bullshit. But anyway, sorry.
All right. Do you give a flip about DearSA? Forget the passion.
Absolutely.
Let me put it this way. I believe that DearSA is probably fundamentally one of the single most important organizations in the civil society space in South Africa right now. I believe it is completely unique in what it's doing. I don't think there's anybody else doing what we're doing or coming close to what we're doing. And I think that if the organization should fail, which is something that I just want to add, we're a strong board. We are very committed to this. We do not want this thing to fail because it's too important to fail. It is far too important in what it does. And we have a whole bunch of very important people that are standing behind us, and we can't let them down either. So the stakes are, personally, the stakes in this thing couldn't be higher. As for Rob, and I'm not trying to be overly charitable here, I do think Rob is passionate about DearSA. However, I think he has a chronic inability to trust anybody else. I think he sees or invents malicious machinations that he sees in people that aren't there, and that he is incapable of letting go of those things, and that state that he's in, and I'm not qualified to make this, but this is my personal opinion, that state then governs absolutely everything he does pertaining to his relationship going forward with that person, and that has been a very destructive path, and that is why we are today. So do I believe he's inherently bad or evil? No, I'm not qualified to make that call, but the things he's done is certainly not helped, and it's been a problem.
Yeah, and it hasn't helped DearSA Africa. If the IP was removed by Rob before it was intercepted, DearSA Africa wouldn't exist, right? It would only exist in Rob's capacity. Well, why would you want to do that to an organization that you care about? Why would you send a cease and desist letter to all suppliers saying that you own the IP and they must cease trading or talking to the board of DearSA Africa? If you cared so much about DearSA Africa, why would you try and liquidate it through a notice 345 or whatever the notice it's called? There's a difference between defending DearSA Africa from a rogue director and actively trying to make sure that it fails. We can see that, the board has tried to keep it going. That's why we defended ourselves in court. That's why we had the hearing. That's why we followed procedure. That's why we're still here. That's why we've made a separate website. That's why we've created a bunch of new things to ensure that campaigns can still run for the most part. Only one person has tried to retard all of that, and he's not present here.
Yeah, well, he was on last week, and so this was not an opportunity to come and have a crap storm, people arguing back and forth. I wanted to give you guys a chance to answer questions and get your thoughts out there. Otherwise,
Chris,
we could do that. But
hopefully you can see. But hopefully you can see through action who actually cares, right? Is DearSA South Africa a person, a personality, or is it an organization, right? If it's an organization, what must be more important? Right, and that's financial management, that's corporate governance, that's ensuring that the assets stay within DearSA South Africa, that's ensuring that it doesn't cease operations. If it's a person, it will depend entirely on how that person wakes up, whether someone pissed in his cereals, whether he had a good sleep or not. This is not a spaza shop. This is a proper organization with a proper board. And the board has tried to do everything in its power to make sure that DearSA South Africa keeps existing and keeps doing the most important work it can.
You'll have to forgive me. I really actually thought you guys were a going tuck shop, actually, not a spaza. So I'm kind of lost in that. But seriously, for my American audience, those are South African terms, little corner stores, little informal shops. So they don't know those terms, spaza and tuck shop. But it's a lot of comments coming here. Let me just address a few comments very quickly. These are not personally directed, so they're actually productive. Reverse Meta said, guys, solve this quickly, and you have turned this spat into new people signing up free marketing. There might be something to that, and that's obviously not why this is happening, but there might be something to that comment here. And Cedric Stevens, and I'm going to elaborate on this, said that all companies have founding members with personalities. It's the role of other members to support and advise, irrespective. The first part is true. It's debatable. The second part, and let me say why. So, for instance, famously, Apple was founded by a gentleman who was ousted later by his own board. He was booted off of there, and the company went a different direction. Eventually, they brought him back later on. Of course, we're talking about Steve Jobs. And this happens in many businesses, particularly for-profit companies where stock is issued and the founders lose control of the stock at some point. Elon Musk better be careful with Tesla. He sold so many shares, he might wind up answering to someone else before it's all over. So, I mean, let me address that, okay? And this is not a defense of Rob Hutchison. It's not an attack. It's just a statement of what I believe to be accurate. And I'll get back to Roman on this. Rob founded the organization. He seems to have a lot of personal investment in it, and he came up with it, the concepts, made it happen, went through a whole mess of someone's origin, whether it was his or other people for previous instantiation, created a new one, and is trying to go forward. He claims to have put as much as $2 million of his own rand into supporting the business. And I think you guys said that he has put money in the business himself that you're aware of. Obviously, it's very important to him, but it sounds like there are some issues, which I think Gideon kind of underlined these issues here, that may be making this a difficult relationship. From that perspective, it seems like Rob has as much personal actual wealth and intellectual capital invested in this as anyone else, and has been there from the beginning. I think that's a fair statement, and it really makes me wonder, and my audience probably, where do we go from here? This is not an easy situation for all of you guys. Roman?
Well, I mean, that's why we have a board meeting on Wednesday, right? Hopefully we can ventilate this. Now that we've tried to defend ourselves as much as possible in open court, and we had the disciplinary hearing as, as needed by law, hopefully now we can just get back to business. And that's what Wednesday is about. But in terms of, I think we all hold DearSA dear. I think we all wanted to carry on in some capacity. But the ways it means to do that, obviously there's a difference there.
All right, well.
But we all want the same thing.
Well, and it sounds like everybody does want the same thing. And I don't know if it's possible to go forward. Maybe some pride needs to be swallowed somewhere along the way. And a division of labor needs to be clearer. And maybe you need some dispassionate other people on a larger board. I don't know. Maybe something needs to happen. Or maybe you can solve it with what you got. But it definitely, for those of us on the outside who are not there, for those who've donated to DearSA, those who've signed the petitions, I've actually signed one or two. I'm not a South African, but I signed one or two petitions on campaigns. I mean, that's allowed, but I've done it. We all, in some way, have a stake or a vested interest in the success and the continuation of DearSA. So I think most people in the chat would say, please, let's sort this out. Hopefully your board meeting will not be contentious, but I have a very sneaking suspicion that your meeting Wednesday is going to be very contentious. And I hope, I don't say pray. I'm not a particularly religious person. I don't say pray that it's not contentious, but Gideon, I would hope that the board meeting goes well. Who runs the board meeting? Is you as a CEO or another board member, or do you just all throw mud at each other in the board meetings? How's that work, Gideon?
So we usually assign some poor unfortunate soul to be the chair of the meeting, and I seem to be having the great luck at drawing the short straw on that one regularly. So and I have to admit that even at our most combative, we had succeeded for the most part in keeping the board meetings very professional, and that's actually the one thing that I would like to sort of say is we see ourselves as a group of professional people. We are not taking this it's not a hobby, it's not a side hustle, even though it might not be a very full-time thing, it's a significant responsibility, and with big implications to getting it wrong and great rewards to getting it right. Roman's little quip there about DearSA will continue in some sort of incarnation. I'd like to say that, no, it's not some incarnation. DearSA will continue. We are going to get the ship through the ice floes and through the icebergs. I don't know what the crew's going to look like at the other side, but it's also a case of one of our biggest mistakes, and it's something that we're not going to be making on the way forward, is that perhaps we've been far too lenient. We've been far too eager to let idiosyncrasies go, and I think we need to set clear boundaries, clear tasks, and no more amateur hour. Really, not that it ever was, but I'm not thinking we can carry on being vague pertaining our personal and professional expectations of the board as a whole. So yeah, no, it's carrying on.
It's interesting, Lummy. You guys don't have to answer this, but Rob Petersey said, Chris, to me it's clear. You keep deflecting in Rob's direction. I sincerely hope your relationship with Rob isn't clouding your judgment, my opinion. Well, that's your view. I've asked very directly, made a very clear statement that I thought it was an error of judgment to hire a company. So I suppose you think that was in Rob's direction. That had nothing to do with Rob. I have also pointed out that there are issues here with Rob and questions about the intellectual property. So I'm not really sure where you draw that conclusion, Rob, but that's your prerogative to draw that conclusion. I think I've been fair on both sides here. These gentlemen welcome disagree. If they think I've been unfair, then I'm sure they'll let me know in private, or they can let me know right here if they think I've been unfair or deflected.
Right here, Chris.
What's that?
Right here. We'll say it right here.
Go ahead. Say it, Ramon.
No, you're not being unfair. There we go.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not being one-sided, am I? I mean, I've thrown barbs at both sides in this conversation, haven't I?
No, but Chris, I don't really care. I was invited onto your show. I'll abide by whatever you say on your show. Like, I'm not here. There's no scientific formula for interviews. I think you're doing a good job, so don't stress too much.
No, I'm not stressing. I thought I'd bring that up there because Rob has been on the program before and he's been a loyal viewer. And then so John Huchin said, I disagree. Chris has been easy on all these guys. Actually, if anything, I think I have been all easy, and it's because I'm not interested in got you. I don't want to. We got to explode. No, it's about just sorting this out, figuring out what's going on, and figuring out where we're going. And before anyone else jumps in, I'll give my take while you guys are on air, okay? Let me give my take, okay? And it's an informed opinion, but it doesn't mean I'm correct, okay? It seems to me, all right, audience, you're listening, it seems to me that when this organization was reset up, that it was created, Rob had to have outside directors, but he was accustomed to running things and he wanted to run things. He brought people in. Ramon, as an outside director, had the impression that he would be there for board meetings and that if he needed help, he would contribute, which Ramon fairly said. And that is how it started. At some point, the workload appears to have become too much or too deep, and then Rob needed more help out there. So, of course, he brought Gideon on. Chloe was on the board. But the division of labor, from my perspective, never seemed entirely clear. Plus, while it may be standard practice in South Africa for not-for-profit organizations to have directors who are also executing daily business for a company like signing invoice and things like that, I think that muddied the water. Also, the communication here at some point seems to have been sparse between folks for whatever reason. And I think that I'm not sure why folks joined as board directors. In the case of Gideon, he made it pretty clear, in my perspective, he wanted to make a difference in something he thought was worthwhile. I get the impression that was the same thing with Ramon. But everything changed early this year for whatever reason. The Division of Labor, the fact that directors started getting paid for the services they're providing, which is not unfair. But I think that at the end of the day, that there is a clash of personalities and expectations here. It seems to me that Rob is comfortable doing things and he wanted to do things, and that the board felt they were out of the loop, and then they re-engaged there, and then the understanding between all parties became broken as a consequence of the actions that took place in the past couple of months. That's my take on it. I would take you all behind the woodshed, hand you base cricket bats, and tell you to sort it out for 10 minutes, and then we come back in to the board meeting for those who still have teeth.
Which we tried to do, Chris, until Rob didn't. And you forgot to mention that he tried to steal DearSA property. Okay, well, and I take you at your word on that. You say you have documentation to say that he transferred the property, and if he did, like you said in April. Attempted to do it, yes.
Okay, but all right. Well, then let's be clear. Then, if it was never officially transferred, then it wasn't DearSA's property. No. No.
It was transferred to DearSA.
Okay.
In April.
Okay, that's what I understood. And
he tried to take it out in September.
When you're saying attempted, he tried to reclaim it. Okay.
Well, he gave instructions to the attorneys. The attorneys were busy doing it until we intercepted it, and then they stopped and credited us when we told them to do so.
And again, and as for Rob Peterson there, when that topic came up, I said that that's not legitimate. That's wrong. If you transfer the property, it belongs to the organization. It belongs to the organization. It's as simple as that. And there should not be an effort to try to transfer it either as a threat to get behavior change within the board or at the company, or as an effort to actually take it. So it's just wrong in all concepts. Anyway, folks, that's my take on it. And both these guys can tell me I'm smoking crack. I don't, but you can tell me if I'm smoking crack. Gideon, you still look forlorn. This looks like the least pleasant conversation we've ever had. I can tell you don't want to be here, and I think that's fair. You shouldn't have to be here. But look, I appreciate you manning up and agreeing to come on and say, we'll come on, we'll talk about this. So let me, we've been at this for an hour and a half. And while I've as Joe Amelia pointed out, it's the largest live audience in ages for Chris Wyatt Africa. I could go on for 5 hours. It's unfair to both you. Okay, so Gideon, I'm going to turn to you. Go ahead, Ramon.
Sorry, so there's one claim that Rob has made over and over again in public that we want to commercialize the database.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about that then before we
I think we should talk about it.
Before we let Gideon get some rest for the night, let's talk about that.
Yeah, sorry, Gideon, just hang on there, my friend. You're almost done. Commercialize the database, right? We want to commercialize it. So as we have shown during the course of the conversation, we've never had access to the database. The database is email addresses of, let's say, 1 million people. We don't actually know. Rob just gives us different. Sometimes it's 700,000, sometimes it's 1.2 million. We don't know because we don't have access to it. Number one, how do you commercialize the database? That would be the first port of call. Number two, why would we want to do that? If it goes against our fiduciary duty as directors. And number three, it's just a flat out lie. And I think it's important for everyone to understand that. It's an attempt to create a bit of fog in the crystal clear issue of whether theft happened or not. So I was hoping just to respond to that particular allegation, which is so far removed from the truth. It's sometimes not even worth saying it, but yeah.
No, it's a fair point to bring up because it was one of the things. The fact that, okay, two issues which I guess they're not really red herrings, but they're germane to the topic. But you guys felt that the call center was not germane. But the call center allegation by him, and then this effort of taking the database commercialized. Now, Roman, I'm going to put you in a spot here. I mean, you're an intelligent, you're a well-educated person, you're a very thoughtful analyst. When I saw your video and you said, how do you commercialize a database? Your second point, I agree with you 100% you just made there. But come on, man. How do you commercialize a database? Google is a multi-billion-dollar company worth $500 billion in stock valuation because it commercialized data. That is the biggest market out there. There's been trillions of dollars made off commercializing data. You and I may not be experts in doing it, but someone can easily commercialize data. That data is very valuable. It never should be commercialized. I'm not saying you were going to do it, but I mean, come on. That one I'm gonna challenge you on. But your second point was spot on. It's not something that's going to happen there. So anyway, thoughts?
But why? But Chris,
Yeah.
what are we going to do? Sell security contracts, phone up people, and sell something to them? No, those things are there for a reason. Data protection is there for a reason. Why on earth would Rob make up this nonsense story that there's everyone but him focused on protecting DearSA? But if you look at the actions,
I quickly
of
jump
people,
in.
that tells the story. Gideon, go.
So I just want to jump in quickly because I need to actually go change a baby, and I am actually sleep deprived.
What's wrong with the old one?
I'm looking for law, not because I don't want to be here. Chris, as difficult a topic of conversation as it is, it's always a pleasure to speak to you, and it's always a pleasure to be on your show. So please don't get the wrong impression. I just need to add something additional about the data. So data is valuable so long as it has context.
Yes.
In DearSA's incarnation, our data is absolutely invaluable. It is extremely valuable for us. Like, it is worth everything to this organization. It might be, to some degree, be valuable for a third party. But if we were nefarious enough and we're willing to break the law and possibly go to prison for it because we want to now commercialize this database, not only would we have to find a third party that is willing to pay us a fair amount of money for it because we can give them exactly what they're looking for, we'd also be competing with actual data providers out there who do this for a living and legally, and who are selling these data, who are selling our information as we're sitting right here legally, and it's a database that is probably 10 to 100 times the size of what the DearSA one is. So not only do we not have the intentions of doing it, it's also, in my opinion, to add to Ramon's, a bit of a nonsensical claim, because we would have to be very short-sighted and idiotic people to do it. And as much as I don't like being self-aggrandizing, I know I'm not that stupid or that crooked. And as shifty as Ramon looks with his Mediterranean complexion, neither is he.
It's the Berber in him.
Yeah, but on that bombshell, I've got another like 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I got all the time in the world.
Yeah. Well, I so all right. Yeah, that's now listen. Okay, so that's look. I think we look. Gideon, I agree with you 100%. It doesn't make any sense at all. It would be stupid and foolish. It would destroy your credibility across South Africa if you did sell the data, and you'd be as popular as Julius Malema in many quarters of South Africa, which is not very popular. So I agree with that. I was calling out that I still disagree with your assessment here. That data it can be very valuable for those who know what they're doing, and there are people that buy it. And yes, there are a lot of data brokers out there, but anyway, point is that that data can be harvested. People write things from that. Algorithms can pull out people's views and target them for marketing, all kinds of things. So, but let's just get past that but the bottom line is that you guys have no intention. You've never given indications, no evidence you've ever tried to commercialize the data that I've seen so far. I've seen nothing.
We don't have access to the data, Chris.
Okay, well that was a point you brought up earlier too. So I mean that's okay.
Why would I want to do something to something that I don't have?
Yeah, that's.
I really want to sell this Ferrari that doesn't exist, right?
I just need to respond to Rob in the comments where he said, I just said that we were willing to run campaigns for other organizations by essentially commercializing our data. Well, firstly, Rob, that was not what we were going to do, and I'll explain why in a second. Firstly, you agreed to doing that. Secondly, we would be harvesting data for that organization on their behalf, and it would be ring-fenced to them only. So it would never be our data. We would have never sold our data to another organization. That was not how those projects work. So please don't misrepresent what I'm trying to explain to the audience here. I'd appreciate it. And Chris, I am going to concede to you, sure. If we were nefarious people,
Yeah.
probably, yeah, it would make sense.
No, Gideon, my only point is that the data can be valuable. I'm not saying that it's valuable to you guys. I'm saying that it could generate. It is. Look, data is valuable. I've worked for the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency. Trust me, I know data is king. It really is, and the commercial market figured that out pretty quickly. So, there, AJM says he's got a question about POPI. Of course, the POPI is the Registration Act. DearSA is a registered. It does have a POPI registration, doesn't it?
Yeah, as well as I know.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it came up. It's just a question came up here. So now,
we got data processing agreements with all our suppliers as well.
Okay.
In terms of protecting that data from any outside source, including hacks and all that sort of stuff.
All
so
right, cool
everything's
beans.
in place in that regard.
So you guys have said this is kind of a red herring earlier, and I went down this path before I talked to you to investigate it, find a little bit about it. This call center thing that came up, which you think is thrown out there, and in fact, it may very well be. I'm satisfied with the answer you gave me, but for those accusing me of not grilling you, I've got something here. I had people go out to the address that's on the letterhead that was given to the board for this company for its contract, and it may be a call center, but it's not a call center tradition that somebody might be thinking for a bank where there's a major building and all this stuff is going on. The address in Nelson Mandela Bay, it appears it's just something rather small there. So the call, and Romana, in your video, you talked about you went down to the call center. So not to go deep in the weeds in this, but just to address this issue, is this like in a residential area? Is it a business center? Is it just inside? Because there was a comment about with, I think is it PEX or PX, the company that your partner that had it. It was internal. So is it in an office he has or something like that, or is this a separate entity altogether? Just to satisfy that question for people.
Yeah, it's an office.
Okay.
Yeah, in a street in PE.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's. I had people go out.
It's
and
not
look.
a factory.
I had people go out and look because I presumed it might be in a business
Right.
park or something like that. It's not in a business park. Okay. So
No, it's not the Google company. It's not Apple. No. It's
well, you did
just
say there were
another
only
office.
2 call center reps because Gideon was saying we're gonna ramp up at some point if it worked out. So okay.
No, for us, but there's dozens of them inside working other contracts.
Oh. So it does other business. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Well, that's why we went there, Chris, because there's an existing call center operation that is set up to deal with as a call center. So he just hires new agents based on new work or new business or new contract.
That wasn't clear to me. I'll be honest about that when we talked earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, what I got from what you said earlier, that's why I raised the question again before we wrap up, was is that your business partner could deliver these services and deliver it in-house and at his existing business, something like that, like he brought a few people in to do it. But obviously this is a company that has the software already for the CRM, which we talked about earlier, the customer relationship management software that does the leads, does the follow-up, gives the information, and so they can just surge, using a military term, they can surge, bringing more people in to work in a call center as you ramp up, or go down if things aren't going well, you're not raising money. So I understand it better now. Okay, that's a lot clearer to me. Okay.
Sorry, Chris, just to add, that is also exactly why we picked them, is because how flexible the contract is and how sort of that's also what kept the costs really, really low.
Yeah.
If anyone drove to that building now, they're likely to encounter the night shift call center staff, possibly on a smoke break or inside doing calls. So
the videos and photographs I have were during the day. Nobody was on a smoke break.
Okay. No, they're supposed to work.
Well, if they're working, they were inside working. They weren't on break.
Yeah. And it's a single story building. It's not a high rise.
Yeah, it's a single story building. I can confirm that.
Yeah, single story building. It's not a massive compound, but unlike it's not like the Holy Grail. It does actually physically exist. The
Holy Grail does exist. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Arthur, King of the Britons.
There's now this rumor perpetuated by someone who's on prison saying that we settled this claim by the call center for 1.6 million rand.
Right, we talked about that earlier.
The official claim is less than that. So why would we settle for something that's more than what is claimed from us? Can people just stop talking nonsense and just think critically with your brains, please? I'm sorry to sound like a puss, but
no, that's
Gideon called me one already, so I may as well. Can we just get down to business, right?
Gideon didn't call you that. That's true.
He did. The call center has a claim of X and they want to fight it in court. We want to settle for far less than X. That's what's called a settlement agreement. All right. And that's what we're busy working on as a board, to limit the liability of Dear South Africa while hopefully trying to make sure that this claim doesn't materialize in the liquidation of Dear South Africa. And it is not more than the actual claim. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Why would a claim be X and then you want to settle for 3X?
So the call center itself, is this being managed by your business partner Byron, or does he have someone doing it for him? He's obviously a business guy. He's got other interests. I mean, who's
No, he's got a whole team.
Is there?
No, he's got a whole team.
Okay. So, I mean, and you just alluded to the call center so more businesses are getting service from that call center than just DearSA under the contract. He has other contracts, other people. So there's probably a site manager there that runs all the call center operations. Is that an accurate description?
Well, I don't know the internal aspects of his business, but
neither
he's
do
got
I.
managers.
I'm just trying to sort it out. Okay, all right.
There's dozens of people there that work there. I mean, I don't really know. I only know our two agents, and that we spoke to them every single day, that we went down there to train them, and that they signed up people.
Okay. Gotcha. We're going to lose Gideon here in a few minutes. He's going to pass out. Plus, I'm sure nappies need to be changed, it sounded like. But before you go, this is a rumor that's out there. So I was not going to go here because I don't really think it's germane, but it's going to be an unanswered question if it isn't. There are rumors and allegations, rumors and allegations I don't even think are fair. I mean, it's just people are making statements that because it sounds nefarious. That's why it's not fair. There's comments, people were making claims that Byron was appointed to the board or attempted to be appointed to the board. Then there are other claims people are making that he was appointed to the board, but he's since been pulled off the board. Can we address that? Gideon, was Byron ever a member of the board or nominated to the board?
No, that never happened. He's not a board member now. He wasn't previously. And in any event, even if we wanted to appoint him to the board, in theory, he's busy litigating against us, which I think there's I'm not a lawyer, but I think there's a few clauses that prohibit you from doing that. So no. I've also seen it all the time that people go, oh, but did you appoint this man as a board member? No. You can go even check the CIPC documents, who tells exactly on the board of directors, even though there is a lag in them. So sure, you might not see everyone's names. I don't know if Chloe's name reflects yet, but no, the only directors on there are the four present ones.
All right, Ramon, you want to add to that, or? I don't think there's need, but that pretty much answers
it. He's not a board member.
Yeah, there you go. It's not a board and never was. Okay. All right. So as far as the lawsuit, I mean, I can't offer legal advice, Ramon, and I wouldn't offer to an attorney because I would think you'd be better positioned. But I mean, I would hope as someone that cares about DearSA, the personal relationship, maybe somebody can convince someone to stop suing DearSA. Maybe it can be said. I don't know if you can approach him, but hopefully that can
all I can say, Chris, to that is thank goodness I'm a director of DearSA, because it would have been liquidated a long time ago with this sort of behavior.
Yeah.
I've been trying to mitigate it as much as possible, actually. So, which is another one of the things I've been doing for DearSA, without me there, and without knowing the service provider. Any other service provider would have had a default judgment immediately and liquidated the entire company. Thanks to me, that hasn't happened. But it still means that
you have intervened on behalf of DearSA on this issue, then.
Well, yeah, to save it from Rob's actions, absolutely. And it still means that he's owed money. It still means that the contract was breached. It still means that he has lost out on other work, and he needs to be compensated for that in some sort of settlement agreement. And that's what we're trying to achieve right now.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Oh.
All right.
Which is what the board's supposed to do,
before I go, Chris, before I go, I just want to corroborate Ramon's thing, because I can already see people going, oh, but he's just saying this. That is actually a valid point. Rob mentions as much in his own court papers that this dispute with the previous call center has put DearSA in such a compromised position that it's actually an existential crisis, for want of a better word, or that it threatens to liquidate the company. I know for the fact that the lawsuit against us, because I can say it now because it's already been mentioned in the public, so it's not as if I'm compromising our situation, has exceptional merits. Our own legal counsel has said as much, that we don't have much of a leg to stand on due to the way that this contract was terminated, and that they recommend we try and reach some sort of settlement agreement because it does threaten the existence or the continued existence of the company. So it's a serious business, and Ramon did, in spite of being a puss, he did actually really pull a rabbit out the hat there for us, and staved that off to a point now where we can at least kind of try and deal with it without the organization being under threat. Yeah, we are. I'm not going to say we're clear of that blast radius, but we're weathering it properly. And on that bombshell, unfortunately, I have to sign off.
Yep, that's fine. Gideon, thank you. Listen, I want to thank you very, very much. First off, for almost immediately, you know, I mean, when I write to folks like Big Daddy Liberty, who's consistently busy, I have to wait weeks for a response. But when I wrote to Gideon, he responded within like 5 minutes. I think it was that quick, and said, yeah, happy to come on. And I said, I'm in touch with Ramon too. And Ramon, of course, you know, he's always sleeping on the job. So it took a few more minutes before he responded. But
I asked Gideon to respond on my behalf.
I know you did. I know you did because of what he said. No, no, just kidding.
No, your invoice is in the mail, Ramon.
Anyway, Gideon, thanks a bunch for coming on and answering the questions. I mean, it's not a pleasant thing to deal with. It's not a pleasant thing to address. Many of the viewers here said that they feel that you, from their perspective, may have just been caught in the crossfire here and had good intentions. A few people had evil things to say about you. People have evil things to say about me, and I'm a wonderful teddy bear who's very considerate of everybody. So that's just the nature of it. Gideon, I'm going to give you one last chance to add any comments or anything you want to say to folks, and then I'll let you drop off, and then Ramon, I'll wrap it up shortly after that. Okay, so
I think that
you have the platform.
The only thing that's important to say, there's two things. The one is, like, firstly, thank you to everyone that has believed in this organization, that's contributed to it, and not just money, publicity, sharing the campaigns, participating in them. That is fundamentally central to who we are and what we're doing, and that is our central pillar. And secondly, I think what I'd like to just ask of people, even though, you know, you're your own free people, you know, you're all free citizens. I'm not here to tell you what to do. Please have faith. This is a good board. This is a good organization. It will continue to do good work. And I have all I can give you is my own personal commitment, and that, you know, I'm not a messiah. I cannot part the Red Sea, and I can't move mountains. But what I can tell you is I'm fully committed to seeing this organization succeed, and I'm fully committed to seeing it prosper and grow, and not only maintain its position but enhance it. So that's all I can give you. Maybe it's worth nothing to you. Maybe it's worth something. I hope it's the latter. And Chris, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a very necessary chat, and I appreciate being here.
Well, Gideon, thank you so much. And based on that, I suspect we'll be able to have another conversation interview on other topics in the future. we haven't broke that bridge. So not that I expected it would. I think you both knew that you'd be treated fairly on here, and that's why you were willing to come on and clear the air. Well, Gideon, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it. You have a lovely evening. Good luck with those nappies. I hope it's number one and not number two, because that's not always pleasant.
The number twos are way easier. The number ones tend to have follow-up fire. And it tends to, the marksmanship isn't there yet. It's everywhere. So, yeah, no.
I was just picturing that, especially if you're changing it. It's not quite over yet. Anyway, all right. Good luck with that. Get some rest, Gideon, and we'll catch you later.
Thanks, cheers.
Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye. Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
All right, Roman. All right. Yeah, that was, whoa. All right, that's
now I've got nowhere to hide.
Yeah, what's that?
Now I have nowhere to hide.
I even know where you're not trying to hide. We're not. It's not who shot Johnny. We're not here to do that. Listen, this is at the end of the day an unfortunate mess, and it's just really sad. I think we can all agree it's really sad, and hope that it can go forward from here. Is there something that we need to address that I haven't done? I don't want to be unfair. Something needs to come up. I think we've touched on most of the topics that rumors and innuendo and allegations and accusations have been flying. Is there anything substantive or even something that you think that we should address that I haven't brought up?
Nothing really comes to mind, Chris. I think we have ventilated all the pertinent issues. I think there's a few people in the chat saying that this won't survive without Rob. I tend to disagree. I think it's relatively simple, especially with our new software to create campaigns and to market them and things like that. So if Rob isn't with us for a while, or whatever the outcome might be, DearSA can survive quite well. But other than that, yeah, what can I say? We've got every faith in the board that this organization will survive and, most importantly, will thrive, and more importantly, contribute to the future of South Africa in a very meaningful way. It's the only reason I'm here. No other reason that's relevant. I'm here because I believe in it. I really do. Otherwise, if I wanted to fail, I would have just resigned and not taken any action whatsoever. But I didn't. I stayed.
Well, I suppose that's a fair point.
Yeah.
If you look at it objectively, Ramon, you could have walked away from this at any time, couldn't you?
I do. I've got other interests. Other interests that do make me money. I've got a family at home. I've got a lot of other interests as well. DearSA is important to me, and that's why I'm here. Simple as that.
No, I think that's fair. I think it's pretty cool. Listen, I'm going to put you in a spot because I got you for a moment. Unrelated to this, completely unrelated to this. And
right. Okay.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
I can breathe.
Okay, you can breathe, but completely unrelated. All right. So my audience, as limited and bandwidth constrained by YouTube as it is, my audience has been niggling me for about 2 months about, I hesitate to say the phrase reunion, but a get together amongst the three amigos and well, Ronaldo shamefully called me the old amigo. But anyway, so I did mention this to you and you hadn't got back to me because you've been busy. Thursday night at 8 o'clock is the plan. Ronaldo, Jeremy, yourself, and me together, 8 o'clock Thursday night. Do you think you can make it, or are you tied up? I've put you on the spot.
It's a Thursday at 8 o'clock. I can certainly make it, but I have a question for you, Chris. Do you want your channel to survive? Because if you do, why the hell are you inviting Germ? I love Germ. He's a very good friend.
I have installed a stream deck right here. I can mute him instantly. Yeah, I know. I told Ronaldo that. I said, because I went to Ronaldo first and I said, look, people are asking me, because I knew you were out of the country at the time. People are asking me to get all this together and they want to see it before Christmas. And I think that's fair because it's a fun conversation when we all get together. And we just got a super chat from Leo Vinyans van Rensborg. Says, thank you, Chris, for letting us hear both sides. We do appreciate it. DearSA has been very important to us. And there's the Christmas bell, not a Salvation Army one. But anyway, so what was I saying there? I lost track of my thought there. Anyway, gosh bless it.
You moan about shadow banning, but then you invite Germ on your show.
Oh, yeah. So Ronaldo, I reached out to Ronaldo and I said, yeah, well, I mean, look, I'd like to do this. Maybe Roman, he's level-headed. And you, it doesn't get out of control. But I mean, Germ, I don't want to lose my channel. And he goes, no, I've had Germ on a couple times. So I wrote to Germ. I said, can you behave yourself? He said, yes. So I am running a serious risk.
I mean, unfortunately, that was one of the reasons why we didn't continue with our.
Because somebody would have lost their channel. Somebody would have lost their channel.
The Pod Bros.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my videos from 2 years ago, I got a strike on because some Karen from the Western Cape reported me for medical misinformation or something like that. It was actually about January 6th. Funny enough, where I'll just live stream what is happening. Like, I didn't do anything else. Yeah. But basically, every time Germ came on, I had to delete the video because it was all about like all these things. I was like, dude, I know you're probably correct on all these things, but it
doesn't matter.
Just don't do it here.
The overlords won't let this happen, man. I mean, the Sith were, anyway, I'm with you 100% on that, but it is a risk. But Germ said he would behave himself. When I was in Cape Town and Ronaldo came over for the Sevens World Cup, Germ linked up with us down there. We had lunch together at the Irish pub down there at the V&A waterfront, which was pretty illuminating. Anyway, yeah. So, all right. So you've committed now. I'll set it up Thursday night, and I'm going to give myself credit for forcing you, putting you on the spot here. It's not like a Big Daddy Liberty where I send a message and 3 months later it's overcome by events. He's like, sure, I can do it.
I mean, I normally give myself 24 hours to respond, to be honest, which I do. And you sent me the message today at like 5, so it does not act like you've been waiting for weeks or something.
What? That was a reminder. I sent you a message last week asking.
Oh, right. But then I was deep in other stuff.
Yeah, you were.
Yes, I'm very happy. I'm very happy to join you on your channel at 8 p.m. I will not be held responsible for anything Jim says. And if your channel is terminated,
actually, I will be held responsible by YouTube, so I can't say I won't be held responsible. Yeah.
Not me. Not me. Last time I let them just fight, and I just laughed throughout because it was very funny.
Well, if he starts talking about Noam Chomsky, I'll mute his microphone. I can't enough of Noam Chomsky. He's going on about him every time I see him. He's like, you should get him on your program. I'm like, no, not a fan. Sorry. Not a fan.
Not interesting either.
Yeah. I don't think he's interesting. I think he's, his time of interest was the 1970s, maybe the early 80s. And since then, it's just, this next guy, he's like Kissinger. Is he still around? He's like 120 now.
Apparently Kissinger is, yeah.
Yeah,
Just
apparently
shows you.
he was in the news
Evil
this week.
pays.
He was in the news this week. Oh, you South Africans really hate Henry Kissinger because
Not because I'm South African, but yeah, I'm not a fan of the global American empire, Chris, of which you're a stooge,
come on.
of course.
We were once a benign empire. It was good, but now we're an evil empire under Joe Manchurian
Oh,
Cadaver
there
Biden.
we go. I think it predates him by a large margin. After World War II, I would say, was when it started to become a bit bad. But I'm a fan of a lot of what you guys do. But for now, I think you're more of a force for evil than good. Not you as people, governments.
No,
governments.
look, I can't disagree. I mean, and it's the Anglo-Saxon world has lost its mind. I mean, England, which came with the Magna Carta 800 years ago in 1215 to limit the power of King John. Now, it wasn't for you and me; it was for the nobles. But in the interest of full disclosure, my ancestors at the time were all those elite nobles, so it was from my family back then. But, well, we only became white trash in the 20th century. That's when we became white trash. But before that, we were actually kind of high ranking. But you know, England, which gave us the Magna Carta and the instantiation of modern democracy based on the Greek model way back when, and constitutional republics. England, which isn't a constitutional republic, but England, which started this, and we get John Locke and David Hume and philosophers and all this stuff. England bans public demonstrations. What the hell is that? Jacinda Ardern, Mr. Ed, the horse face down there in New Zealand, Dan Andrews in Melbourne, in Victoria State in Australia, and you know Cyril Ramaphosa there, and Joe Biden, Macron, the Tories, Rishi Sunak, and before him, you know these people are all frauds. The entire world is lost its mind, especially the Anglo-Saxon part of the world. It's crazy.
I mean, there's only two people worthy, well, three people worthy of respect: Giorgia Meloni of Italy.
Yep.
Viktor Orban and Vladimir Putin.
Who was the second one?
I thought you would flip off at Putin. Viktor Orban from Hungary.
Okay.
Orban.
Yeah. From Hungary. Yeah. Look, Putin is not on my Christmas list, but then neither is Zelensky.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
But me neither. Don't get me wrong. But I think, yeah. Anyway, he's a more interesting character than this evil Nazi guy. He's actually fighting Nazis, ironically enough.
Oh,
I don't approve of the war.
We have a troll in the chat. You missed it because we're chatting here. It says Roman is a puss. He talks cock about PE, then keeps sending business to PE. Pick a side.
Keep sending business. I didn't send, DearSA sent one contract to PE, which was unilaterally cancelled unlawfully. But other than that, PE is great. I don't mind PE, especially if you go like outside of it. It's wonderful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, somebody was asking about, and sorry, just to distract, someone's asking about when I'm coming back to South Africa. I'm coming in February. It all hinges on the date that Steve Hofmeyer is performing at the Tall Monument. I'm going to hinge my visit on that. And Roman, for your edification, I'll start my journey in Gauteng this time. I'm not flying to Cape Town with Lufthansa because I'll probably be the passenger they drag off the plane and put in leg irons. They make me wear a freaking facial covering for 24 hours again, bastards. Yeah, so I'll probably fly to Gauteng, start my journey.
That's why you fly the Arab airlines. They say masks are necessary, and you just don't put one on, and they don't actually say anything.
Yeah,
well,
but that works great for you guys. But Emirates and Qatar and those guys don't come from here. So I mean, they'll go to Europe. So I'd have to book 2 tickets, fly to Europe, and then fly with those guys. The flights that come here, they're just not that great, but you guys have lots of great flights. The thing for me is I got to fly with the traditional carriers, either American ones that are on an air alliance to Europe and go out of Paris or London or Frankfurt more likely and come down. But yeah, I'll fly to Gauteng. I'll be there and hopefully we can link up this time, and touch base. And I'll do a few meet and greets, and then I'm going to go in the Western Cape as well. Beyond that, I haven't set anything up, and it all hinges. I'm waiting for Steve Hofmeyer to get back with me. He's a bit slow. He's read my messages because he gets millions of them. He's a bit slow. But I have a friend who lives near him who's good at poking Steve, and then I get a response. So I'm about to ask the friend to poke Steve because I need to start planning.
He's the same with me as well.
Yeah.
Steve's a good guy. I like him.
Oh, he's a great guy. I don't know. Did you hear, before you run off, did you hear about my visit? Steve hosted me at a braai at his place.
Oh, really? Okay, I haven't had the privilege. You can see who he prefers.
Ooh, well, that's because I'm a colonel, and he knows better than to turn me down.
Oh, and I'm not.
Well, according to Ronaldo and Gideon, you're something else entirely. But anyway, no, but seriously, he invited me for a braai. I went to his place for a braai. And when I was in Uppington, the Sightlanders. So I went up there and we did a public address. It was on the internet. We had like 22,000 people watching it live. When I was up there for that event, they gave me a satchel that was branded. It's a leather satchel. It says Colonel Wyatt and Sightlanders and the date for the event and everything. And it had 3 bottles of wine and a brandy in there. And that was great. Now, in South Africa, you can go on a plane with alcohol. I can't do it in America. So I was able to take it back to Gauteng.
Land of the free, huh?
What's that? Land of the
Land
free,
of the free.
yeah, land of the free, right? Liquids, you can't take liquids on here except unless it's in your bladder. Anyway, so when I went back to Gauteng and I went to Steve's, I took it to show it to him because I was going to share the brandy with him. But we got in a conversation. The evening started going on. I left it in the kitchen, and needless to say, I left there and left my satchel behind. Now, we tried to make arrangements to get it back to me, fly it to the Cape, me get it. It just never worked out because the person I left it with, or I left it at Steve's place, but he went and picked it up, took it to his place, and then he was added to, anyway. So long story short, I left it in South Africa. My friend's house was robbed. They took everything. The place I stayed that night after being at Steve's house in Centurion, they took everything. They even stole my satchel of wine, the leather case with the 4 bottles of wine in it. But apparently they got away from the property towards the wood line or something like that, or the bushes. I don't know if they looked at it or their hands are full, but they might have looked at it and saw Colonel on there or Sightlanders and wet their pants. They left it there and took everything else. So my satchel has been recovered and is back in the possession of South Africa, of a legitimate person. So my wine and brandy are still waiting. Maybe we can share that brandy.
Oh, they didn't even take the brandy.
No,
it's
all there.
Lucky.
Well,
very lucky.
I don't know if they were scared of either the Colonel designation that was branded on it or that it said Sightlanders. One of the two probably frightened them. But it is quite a story, to say the least. And then, of course, the rugby ball, but that's another story. We'll save it for another time.
Yeah, but the next time you come, I'll make an effort. We just happened to cross paths. I was overseas and you were here, so it was very difficult. But we'll certainly make a plan.
All right, sounds good. Ramon, listen, we probably go for a while. It's late. Thank you so much. I hope that you feel you were treated fairly and also that you were asked a few hard questions, which I think needed to be asked just so people were informed, and that at the end of this, people will not make judgments against DearSA, whether they like you or Rob or don't like you isn't germane as long as they support DearSA. That's my position. What are your thoughts? I'll give you the last chance to wrap up here.
No, I think DearSA as an idea is very important, but DearSA must not be a personality. That's the point of the entire platform, right? The platform is not to take a view of something. It's for people to take a view on something. So DearSA really is not about the board. I haven't told anyone I was the director of DearSA until this week, because it's not something that I advertised, right? I sent quite a lot of morning shot videos to DearSA, especially in the early days, and then when things started winding down, I did not. But at the end of the day, DearSA as an idea is very important. DearSA as an idea should continue to exist, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that happens. It's as simple as that.
Well, that's certainly reasonable and fair. And listen, I've got to say this. I like the background you got there. I don't know if you're in your living room or your study, but it looks pretty good there. I like the timbers on the roof. That's pretty cool. Other than that, I think, is that Annie Liebenberg print that's on the wall there? The guy in New York carrying a jacket. It's a famous
That's
one.
James Dean.
Oh, is that James Dean? Oh, okay.
Yes, it is.
I didn't have the full angle there. Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah, then that's pretty cool if that's James Dean. That's a famous one. I knew it was, I was thinking of a different one there. But anyway.
I think it's from 1952. Sounds
about right. That's before all of our times.
So, I mean, there's the rest of the room for those who are very keen to see. So it's my studio. It's my study. It's where I work. And it's a part of the house that's mine. And I told my family, if you come in here, there's a booby trap shotgun.
Well, I will say this in the interest of self-promotion here for this program, which we know is critically hampered by the platform. Listen, if you've tuned in and you found this even remotely interesting, the content on here I like to think is pretty darn good. Please become a subscriber. It costs you nothing. All you do is push that button right below the video and you become a subscriber. Nothing to it. If you want to leave a comment behind, I just ask that, you don't make personal attacks against people. That won't stop people, but I'm just asking politely. And also give us a like on the video. Even if you didn't like what came out of it, give us a like because we took the time to do it. And Ramon and Gideon took the time to come on here and answer the questions. And again, you guys were asked a few hard questions, and there were a few softballs in there, and I did set some things up with leading questions, but I think that helped frame the conversation. It wasn't a debate. So Ramon, thanks a lot, buddy. Appreciate it.
No, pleasure, Chris. I appreciate that. I didn't see any hard questions in terms of putting me under pressure. I just answer truthfully because, as someone once said on your show, when you have the truth, everything is quite easy. And I actually agree with that statement. So thank you for having me on. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday under lighter circumstances.
Yeah, look, I have no intention to talk about this topic at all, even though Rob is going to be on my program earlier on Thursday for our Answer the Question session. I have no intention of bringing this topic up during that. I'm making sure I control Jeremy Nell on the program. That's all I'm worried about.
No, he does behave. He does behave. Just have to remind him.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. You have a good evening. I'll let you drop off, and then I'll wrap up for my viewers, okay?
No worries at all. Thank you for watching, everyone. Speak soon. Thank you, Chris.
All right, you're welcome. All right, folks, that was Roman Kabanak, famously of Morning Shot, and before that, Renegade Report and Tea with Helen. And he is a director at DearSA, along with Gideon and Chloe Roberts and Rob Hutchison. And this has been a follow-up to the conversation I had with Rob last Thursday, in which Rob really talked about what he felt was a hostile takeover from his perspective. These guys answered the questions, and there you go. So that's kind of where we're at, folks. Hopefully it can all be sorted out. Hey, Al, for once, they can all be sorted out by these folks and come to some kind of conclusion, which is to the benefit of the organization and to South Africa, because I think that South Africa needs an organization like this. So thanks a lot. All right, cool beans, folks. There's lots more employment contracts, hours worked, this, that, and the other. There are many more things here, but I think we've sussed out the top issues that came out from Rob and others, and then what came out here today. So thanks a lot, folks. Amy, Justine LaRue, it is a great pleasure to see you once again. Last time I saw you was at the airport in OR Tambo, and you wished me farewell. Thank you so much for that. I hope you're well. And I didn't get a chance to drink the drink that you gave me, but it is sitting in Cape Town waiting for me to come back. So I will get to that drink when I get back to South Africa in February. Thank you all so much. Be sure to hit the like button if you don't mind, and join us here tomorrow when Athol Trollope will be on the program. Well, Athol Trollope on Tuesday, and we'll be talking about Eastern Cape governance. The former Democratic Alliance mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, and now the current chair for the Eastern Cape for Action SA, Herman Mashaba's project. All right, folks, thanks a lot, and thanks to my guests, and thanks to Rob. He interjected here. Al Ferwant, I didn't know you were here. Ronaldo for popping in. Hugo Kruger popped in here, plus the usual suspects. Chris Holmes was in here all the way from Australia. Thank you for that, folks. Take care. I don't want to go off. I actually had a good time with this conversation, but there's things to do, and that's it. That's the subject matter. Take care of yourselves, folks. Again, you've heard both sides now. Those who want to pass judgment, if you're objective, you can pass judgment, but let's just hope that this thing goes smoothly. It's Athol Trollope. Did I spell Trollope wrong? I'll have to go back and check that. Did I spell it wrong? No, I got it. Trollope. Trollope. All right, folks. Thanks a lot. Take care. And that's it from here in central Pennsylvania. Whew. It's been an interesting stream, and I really appreciate everybody showing up. It has, I don't want to say it's been fun, but it's certainly been engaging, and that's the best you can hope for sometimes. Cheers, everybody. Don't forget to hit that like button.